Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. I'll begin by acknowledging we are in Treaty 1 territory and additional homeland the Métis Nation. My name is Neil Harden. I'm chairing today's panel. With me is Diane Knight to my left and Tracy Anderson to my far left. The assessor today is Lindsay Wareham and the recording secretary is Kelsey Harrison. We'll be hearing applications for revision of the assessment rule in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application and will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that the applicants or the assessor make at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the board. The board is appointed annually by council and is independent of it in the city administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I'll confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following swearing in. We'll then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions the applicant may have, and the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application is brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You'll receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. So you can swear them in, please, Kelsey.
Do you swear or affirm? Could you please state your name?
Lindsay L.A. Wareham.
And do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you.
Bradford Scott Workstone.
And do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Okay, we have an ambitious docket tonight, so please be to the point. So you can proceed. The first item today is 721 Watt Street.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have file number 19-3279, roll number 0201170300. The address is 721 Watt Street. If you turn to page 2, I'm recommending to maintain the 2020 assessed value of $656,000. We have, if you turn to page 3, the subject property is located on the northeast corner of Kimberly Avenue and Watt Street. This is a domo with a vehicle service garage on site as well. If you turn to page 4, you'll see subject property photos. If you turn to page 6, you'll see the income stream for the domo. We have a leasable area of 95 square feet, which is an agreement by ourselves and the applicant. The rent is $182.31 per square foot, which also is an agreement. We have a vacancy of 2%, which the applicant has 4%. We have 2% expenses. The applicant is using 7. We have a shortfall of $6. The applicant is using $4.50. And we have a cap rate of $6 or 6.8%, and the applicant is at 7.5. For a final value for the SKP, that's the store kiosk, of $244,000. If you turn to page 7, this is our chart that we have for our store kiosks with pumps as well as our vehicle car washes. Obviously, there's no car washes on site at this location, so we're just looking at the store kiosk rents. If you look at the lower square footages, we have 95 square feet, and so if you look at the lower square footages, comparable number 4, comparable number 8, comparable number 9, comparable number 10, comparable number 11, those are the lower square footages. And again, we are in agreement of the $182 per square foot that has been used for that. If you look on page 8, this is the vehicle service garage income stream. We have a leasable area of 1,380 square feet. We are in agreement on the rent, the vacancy, the shortfall. There is a dispute between the expenses as well as the cap rate. We have an additional building value for this income stream of the vehicle service garage. The additional building value is reconstructed costs less depreciation for the additional expenses, so for the underground tanks, it's for the domo with the pumps, it's just showing on the wrong stream.
Sorry, you said expenses and.
Sorry, so we have the less depreciation for the pumps, the fuel shelters, as well as, so I said the pumps, the tanks, and the shelter. Those are the typical ones that we typically apply our additional building values to for the store kiosks with pumps. If you look on page 9, these are the comparables that we have for vehicle service garages. We have a large range here and a large set of comparables. We have an average of $13.78 and a median of $12.63. It was brought to my attention that there were a few comparables on our sheet that need to be removed because some information at a previous hearing was brought up. So I'd like you to exclude comparable number 1, comparable number 13, comparable number 21, as well as comparable number 22. My apologies, we will have to go through this a few times just because this was found out after the submittal for this particular hearing. So we will have to go through that, so my apologies. That actually doesn't change our average or our median removing those 4. They still stay at $13.78 and $12.63.
I apologize for interrupting. Did you also want or mean to remove 24 as well?
Yes, we were removing that one as well. My apologies. So those are the 5 we're removing, and again, my apologies, but it does not change our average or our median at $13.78 and $12.63. If you look on page 10, these are income streams for both of the properties. Again, we have a blended capitalization rate for this property of 6.39% between the 2 income streams. If you turn to page 11, this is general cap rate information that we have in all of our briefs. These are properties that are reviewed by outside companies such as Colliers, CBRE, and Cushman Wakefield, and then we compare our capitalization rates with those that are presented by those companies. If you look on page 12, we have Municipal Assessment Act information. On page 13, we have the IE for the subject property. And then on page 21, we have the addenda that the City of Winnipeg puts in all of their briefs. Please note that every reassessment, we're looking at new data at the reference dates. The reference date is April 1st, 2018. So we are legislated to do a new reassessment every 2 years with the applicable data. So we take a fresh look at the data that's here, and then we evaluate and apply our assessments accordingly. So if you look on page 24, this is more cap rate information. We have office cap rates, retail cap rates, multifamily cap rates, and industrial cap rates. These are arm's length verified sales that our department has reviewed multiple years of income information and come up with actual net operating incomes for these properties against sale prices for these properties. So if you'll look, the office cap rates range from 5.1 to 6.54%. We have retail cap rates that range from 3.1 to 7.4%, multifamily cap rates that range from 4.03 to 5%, and industrial cap rates that range from 4.97 to 8%. On page 25, my apologies, we have our non-recoverable expense sampling. So we have multiple non-recoverable expenses within our income streams when I spoke of that are found on pages 6 as well as page 8. So we have vacancy as one of our non-recoverable expenses, we have our shortfall, and then we have our additional non-recoverable expense allowance of 2%. We have 2% that we have used. If you look at the bottom of our page 25, we have a range, a non-recoverable expense study of 29 properties, and we have a median of 1.06%. So that defends that additional 2% non-recoverable expense that we have for the subject property. If you have any questions, that's my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any of them.
Okay, questions?
I do have some questions. As we're going through the different properties today, all save one are model generated?
Model generated, correct.
All except for one, correct?
In what sense?
Okay, so you, are all of them model-driven values?
Yes.
And in terms of the model, you're here and you're defending model rents, correct?
On this particular
Well,
project?
I'm trying to ask some questions on the entire docket in general.
Mm-hmm.
And then hopefully we can carry them through. I'm happy to ask them every property, but just trying to get expedited by asking the questions generally to apply to each of the properties on the docket. And then we'll get into some specific questions about this particular property.
Okay, I can answer general questions, although I would like to note to the board, the first 1 through, I believe, 6 of the items on the docket are actually gas stations. The remainder of the properties are not gas stations and they don't have pumps. So one of my concerns is if we're talking about them in generalities, we should probably look at gas stations and then look at the additional vehicle service garages. This is one that does have a vehicle service garage portion to it. But if we're going to talk generalities, yes, all of the rents that are presented in all of these properties are model driven.
Let me break it down for you then in terms of SKP, which is, for lack of a better term, a convenience store,
It's a store kiosk with pumps.
store kiosk. Is there a difference between a kiosk of 95 square feet like the subject and what I'll describe as a structure that might be 2,000 square feet or larger?
Our model does apply different rates to them, so if we do have something that is smaller, like the subject at 95 square feet, we do have higher rents on them, similar to the $182.
But the model itself still defines them as kiosks, right?
I believe so, yes.
So, in general terms, for the vehicle service garages, and that's the larger of the two structures on this property, on your page 8, correct?
Correct.
And the model has applied a 4% vacancy loss to that, correct?
Correct.
And a 2% non-recoverable shortfall, and you discussed that, shortfall at $4.50 a square foot.
Correct.
Now, generally speaking, the model, the information from income and expense questionnaire is entered into your system. The system then generates model-driven shortfall rates, right?
I believe so. I can't speak clearly to how the model works because I'm not a modeler and I don't actually do that.
So just, I want to turn your attention to page 17 for a moment.
Okay.
And it's going to be a common theme certainly throughout the gas stations. But in this particular case, we have 1,475 square feet of structure, correct?
Correct.
And you'll see there under the total taxes and insurance, 12,661 rounded.
Yes.
Do you know what that works out to per square foot?
I have not calculated it.
If you calculated it out, would it be $8.58 a square foot?
I have not calculated it.
Would you do so, please?
We're willing, if you worked it out to $8.58, we're willing to take your word for it.
I'm happy to do that. I just wanted her to be comfortable with the figure.
Sure.
Okay. Now, the model has generated a shortfall rate for the store/kiosk of $6 a square foot and $4.50 for the VSG, is that correct?
Yes, they have different parameters.
And as we go through the properties today, you will see, as I question you, that certainly for the gas stations, the shortfall that's been applied to both the store/kiosk and the VCWs, or the vehicle car washes, are significantly higher than what the model has as applied. You're not sure of that?
Can you ask that question
Sure.
again?
As we go through the gas stations today, and
Okay.
there's a number of them, if you just, for example, consider only the property tax expense, that property tax expense on a per square foot basis is significantly higher than the model generated $6 or $4.50.
So you're saying the actuals that they've reported on the income and expense mailer is higher than what our model has generated? Is that what your question is?
That's what I'm suggesting to you. Were you aware of that?
I have not calculated that. All I did was look through our briefs. And honestly, when I looked at both of our information, we were in agreement on the $4.50 and only the $6 was in
Yeah, I'm just trying to
contention.
drill down as to how the model could determine such a relatively low shortfall rate given the actual expenses. Now, if we back up for a minute, as we go through the properties today, this one happens to be a store/kiosk and a VSG, correct?
Correct.
And you indicated that the additional building value of $110,000 was pumps, tanks, and shelter on your page 8.
We have
An additional building value of
one, yeah.
$110,000.
You asked me what it was for, so.
No, what I asked you to confirm was that you indicated that it was for pumps, tanks, and shelter.
I was gonna say and read what it was for you since you were asking the question, but I can wait for your other question, that's what you're.
Well, that was the question.
Okay, so we have a 5,000 gallon underground tank. We have a pump shelter. We have another 5,000 gallon tank.
Is that within your brief?
No, this is my verbal presentation.
So let me just pause you there for a moment. When you say shelter, are you talking about a canopy or the kiosk?
I'm reading how the information is prepared, but Mr. Chairman, I am gonna point out that Mr. Borgstrom is accepting this number and he has used it in his valuation. So I'm happy to answer these questions, but we will be here for a very long time if we're gonna be going through all of this information.
Well, we're going to, and so my intent is to simply have the assessor clarify what is included on this one, and presumably it's the same on all the rest of them.
Okay,
So you've used the term shelter, and can you,
We use Marshall and Swift.
yes, and can you confirm that the pumps, tanks, and shelter, by any other name, including within Marshall Swift, would be pumps, tanks, and canopy?
I wouldn't be able to speak to what the other names are, but I'm going to say most likely, but I'm not sure. I know the information, we have it labeled in our system that I've defined it as such.
Do you know if the shelter includes the 95-foot?
It does not.
It does not, and so the store/kiosk is separate and apart, yes?
The store/kiosk is
Has a
separated.
separate assessment, valued separately.
We have an additional cost to those.
The store/kiosk, the 95-square-foot structure, has been valued and has its own income stream and has been valued separately for assessment purposes, right?
Correct.
And similarly, for this property, the VSG also has its own income stream and is valued separately, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's an additional value assigned for pumps, tanks, and canopy, correct?
Correct.
Now, that additional value would carry a tax burden with it, and in terms of calculating the shortfall, do you know if the model accounts for that?
I wouldn't be able to speak to that again. I am not involved in the modeling section, so I do not know how they analyze their information on their end.
Now, do you know if in the modeling process, if the model lumps together SKPs, whether they lump in all the properties that would fall under the VSR category? commercial service, vehicle service related, right? Do you know if they're all lumped in together?
If all of our commercial vehicle service related properties are lumped in together,
For the purpose of modeling?
I, again,
Don't know?
do
Okay.
not know. And Mr. Chairman, I will say, if these are questions related specifically to how our model works, I think my answer is gonna continuously be, I'm not part of our model and I wouldn't be able to speak to that.
I appreciate that, but you'll understand my difficulty in trying to examine the assessor on this when she's saying she's coming in here to defend the model. So you'll appreciate the difficulty that we have on this side from that. So, I want to talk about the store/kiosk for a moment. You're familiar with the principle of substitution, are you not? In appraisal theory?
Yes,
And that basically says that no one will pay more for a property than it would cost to construct a similar structure, correct?
correct.
Now, if we take a look at your page 6, and we look at your capitalized value for the 95 square foot structure, that does not include pumps, tanks, and canopies. And so, you'd agree with me that if we divide the 95 square feet of the structure by the $244,000 assigned to it, that works out to $2,573 per square foot of the 95 square foot structure.
For the structure, correct, but when we're looking at kiosks and gas stations, we are looking at it in a sense of, it's not just the building, like there's a worth to the property. So you can't just disclude what's happening because you say there's a 95 square foot building on it, when it's a gas station and there's a significant amount of land required to have a gas station. Cars need to pull into it, they need to be able to.
And similarly, the tanks underground and the pumps also require an amount of land,
Mhm.
right? So do you know what those land ratios would be?
I'm not sure, but I was answering your question with respect to the 95 square feet and working it out to the 200,044, just because I think calculating that way is excluding what's actually going on with this particular property type.
So you agree with me that we are not, for real property or for real, for property assessment purposes, we are to be assessing the land and buildings only, correct?
We are supposed to be assessing properties as a whole, correct?
Land and buildings, so the underlying lands and the bricks and mortar on top, right?
Yes.
We are not to be assessing business value, correct?
Yes, I believe so.
So again, when you talk about a business operation, we have a 95 square foot structure that works out to $2,573 per square foot structure. Pumps, tanks, and canopies valued separately, and then the VSG valued separately.
Mhm.
Now, I want to take you to your page 7. And this particular page, I'm going to, let me ask you more directly. Did you prepare this information?
No, I put it in the brief. This is what we
Right.
use for all of our store kiosks with
And-
pumps as well as our car washes.
Right, and in fact, this exact same information was used for 2018 appeals, right?
It was used for both, yes.
And no updates that you know of have been made to this?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Now, if we take, ask you to turn to your page 11, you show here a number or a range of capitalization rates, both city model driven and from market reports.
Mm-hmm.
Can you identify which category the SKP/store would fall under?
We don't have an SKP/store on here.
Do do any of the market reports?
No, they don't analyze SKP/stores. They actually don't, there's a number of property types that aren't on this chart. One of the ones that I know of very well are parking structures and parking lots.
And so similarly with the vehicle service garage or the VSG, do you know which of these categories it would fall under?
Which one would estimate that it falls under?
Which one does it fall under?
Well, it doesn't fall under any because none of them are SKPs.
Which one, well, in terms of VSG though?
None of them are vehicle service garages either.
So for the VSG, which one would be closest?
I would venture to say that vehicle service garages are sort of a mix of industrial sort of retail properties.
And what about the kiosk/store?
I would agree with the same thing.
And we're not there yet, but car washes would be kind of the same thing?
I would say so.
Okay. Now, at the onset, just looking at your page 9, you asked the board to remove a number of these comparables, correct?
Well, she did what she did.
No, I'm just getting there.
Yes, there was a hearing that you were part of last week, and the assessor who was here representing that came back and did company searches
Yeah.
of every single property that you had contention with within your rebuttal.
Right.
And she went through and provided all that information to the staff in our section for us to remove them. This information had been submitted, obviously, prior to that hearing. So I went through and removed the ones that we felt necessary to remove.
And that's fine. And so at that hearing, and I appreciate that you weren't there, but at that hearing, I indicated to the assessor at that time that we had done a very preliminary analysis of some of them. Do you know if the balance of these properties have been searched for related holdcos, leasecos?
Like all of these?
Yes.
I believe she went through every single
single one?
I believe so.
Okay, fair enough. And she found nothing.
I don't think so. These are the ones, she sent out an email to all of our staff and indicated which ones needed to be removed, which ones she felt didn't need to be removed, and why.
Would you agree with me that the comparables on page 9 here, and these are all contract rents, right?
I
On
believe-
page 9?
Yes, they're all from the mailers that are submitted to us.
And save and accept perhaps the subject property and perhaps one or two others, all of them are in high visibility, high traffic locations?
All of the comparables,
Yes.
I believe they all are on a range of streets. I can't indicate how high visible some of them are versus other ones. We have some that are more higher visible streets, like Pembina Highway clearly is a main street, Portage Avenue is clearly a main street, McPhillips, Pembina. But there are a number of them that aren't, I wouldn't think main streets, like Clarence, I wouldn't consider a more main drag. There are parts of King Edward that are not more of a main drag. So there is a range. Some are on more high profile, some aren't. I think that these are comparable. These are all of our vehicle service garages, and there's a good range here. When you have a large sample size, you have a better chance of having a more accurate average and median. So that's what we've presented.
And those are my questions, thank you.
Okay, Tracy, do you have any questions?
I do not, thank you. Sorry, I do have one question.
Okay, go ahead.
When you're talking that 110,000, so you calculated one side out to be 244 and the other side to be 412 for a total of 656. So where is that 110 coming into play?
The 110,000, in my opinion, is showing on the wrong income stream.
Okay.
The value's still there, but however it's showing in our system, the way it's coming out, it's coming up on the vehicle service garage income
Okay.
stream. So if you look on the bottom of page 8, it says additional building value. To make more
That's
sense,
okay.
it should really
Be on the
read
other one.
on the page 6.
Okay.
but it's still added there on the property as a whole, but it is more applicable and it does fully come from the SKP. So
Okay.
it should show up there, it
I
just
just didn't
doesn't
see it
for
on the
whatever
pages, and then
reason.
I was kind of going back and forth, going, where's this 110?
And then if you look on page 10 also, under the capitalized values of both of the income streams, there's a total adjustment line,
110,
and
there
it
we go.
shows the 110.
That's all I needed to know. is
No
where the heck
problem,
was, 'cause
it
I
can be really confusing.
couldn't figure it out in all of this, and I'm like, what? Okay, thank you.
Okay, and I have no questions, so you can proceed.
I do have two rebuttal packages for the properties today. In this particular case, because it's dealing with both an SKP and a vehicle service garage, I will have, I can go through both of them at the same time, concurrently, consecutively. But I don't know if the panel members have seen this before, so. First thing I'm going to take you through is the rebuttal for the VSG, or vehicle service garages. It's the larger of the two packages. This was prepared on the basis of what the city provided in their brief. We have on our, so the pages are actually bolded in fairly large, dark black numbering at the bottom right-hand corner. And on page 4, there are 8 properties highlighted. The assessor has removed 5 of them, but remaining in place are number 12, number 17, and number 31. Now, we did some checking, and you'll see there on page 6, those properties are actually owned by Treadmark Properties. And I'm telling you that because it's our suggestion to you, and we'll go through the information in a moment, that there is some interconnectivity as between Treadmark Properties, Goodyear Tire, and Fountain Tire. We take a look at page 6, and there's a highlighted section there. You'll see there at the top of the right-hand paragraph under the tenant, Fountain Tire is a privately owned company whose shareholders are management, 51%, and Goodyear Canada, 49%. And so we know that there was a relationship between Goodyear and Fountain Tire, some interconnectivity. That's the reason I would suggest to you that the assessor has removed for comparable number 1. That property is actually owned by Goodyear. 960 Pembina, well familiar, it's right underneath the Jubilee underpass as you're going southbound. That building is actually occupied by Fountain Tire, owned by Goodyear. That's why it was removed. But for the other properties, it goes on to say, page 6, individual stores within the Fountain Tire network are typically owned 50% by Fountain Tire and 50% by the local manager, with all financial services provided by Fountain Tire. And it goes on to talk about Fountain Tire and Goodyear have adopted a strategy for the real estate, and then the real estate is actually owned by Treadmark. So Treadmark, on page 7, you'll see there are 3 properties in Winnipeg, under Manitoba, Henderson, Inksbrook, and Portage Avenue. Those are all lease comparables that the assessor has elected to leave in place for the purposes of this evening's hearing. We researched a little further on page 8. It's an excerpt from the 2014 annual report of the Alberta Treasury Branch. And you will see, as we go through that, on page 4, comparable number 31, 165 Inksbrook, that's a 2014 lease. This is the 2014 annual report from the Alberta Treasury Branch, and you'll see there highlighted on page 9. The gentleman there is principal occupations chair of Fountain Tire Ltd, and he's also a director with Treadmark Properties. That's a 2014 Alberta Treasury Branch annual report excerpt, and certainly the assessor's comparable number 31 dates to 2014. There's a relationship between that. It's not an arm's length, open market transaction or lease. We go to the next one, and page 11, and it's actually the next year. The same gentleman, now he's a former chair and CEO of Fountain Tire, and he's still with Credmark Properties, so that was in 2015. Properties on Henderson and Portage Avenue certainly predate those leases, their locations, the Fountain Tire locations at those two addresses certainly predate those leases. And so again, the occupancy, there's an intermingling of the properties. I am not going to go through each property one by one, and I will leave it to you to do. But you can see as you go through the pictures what the particular buildings are, and you can compare them to the actual pictures of the properties we have under appeal today, and you'll see almost exclusively you have high visibility, high traffic locations, which would require a significant adjustment in rent. I don't care what the average and median is or remains, you still need to make the adjustment. So, having said all of that, that's the information I wanted to cover in this part of it. I'm happy to answer questions on it, or I can.
Go through your entire rebuttal.
Okay. Yes, two comparisons. Do you have copies of this? Let me know if you have. I've got an extra one. So if we take a look at the VSG lease comparisons, you'll see there on page 4, that's the chart that we're seeing in every single property. And I have included at the rear of this all of the properties on the docket today, excerpts of the city's briefs, and you'll see exactly the same chart from 2018, exactly the same chart. And the assessor readily acknowledged that they haven't updated them, that they continue to use information from the previous reassessment. What I want to show you on page 4, and that's frankly the only one that I've checked of this list, they actually have a couple of errors. One, they state an annual pad site rent. That's not correct, and I'll tell you why in a minute. I can also tell you that the 580 square foot convenience store, and we've all been into the Red River Co-op convenience stores. The 580 square foot structure was built in 1996, was scraped in about 2017 and rebuilt. And I've got the confirming information attached here. It was scraped, it was rebuilt, it is now 1,685 square feet. They've pushed it back, and they have added 2 double pumps or 4 pumps, expanded the canopy on the site. The site size hasn't changed, the pad lease hasn't changed. Every one of these locations, when it's a pad lease, it's based on the business, the amount of gas that they can pump through in that location. Domo Gas, actually in this location, it's not an arm's length lease, there's a common relationship between Domo and the owner of the property. They use a formula whereby they assign a value per liter of gas that they can pump in any location. That's what they're prepared to pay in any location. There are 5 arm's length locations for Domo properties within the city, and they're all based on exactly that amount. Now, I told you that they had scraped the site. Let me take you to page 8. The page right before is page 7. That's from the 2018 appeal. You'll see they were built in 1996, 560 gross square feet. And on page 8, you'll see there the original structure and the pumps, tanks, and canopy. And then on the bottom picture, you will see circa 2018, the 1,685 square foot store. with now 6 double pumps and not just 4. I've also included the confirming information from the 2020 assessment on this property on pages 10 and 11, just confirming that it is 1685. That's why you don't use pad leases. You can very easily come up with distorted rents. It has nothing to do with the value of the buildings on it. Imputed rents, particularly in terms of car washes, are not the way to go in determining what rent should be assigned to these properties. Now, you recall that I told you that the rent was not a true net rent. If you turn to page 17, this is the income statement for this lease, and you'll see there the property rental revenue, that's at $79,493, 494 rounded. That's the amount reported by the city on this property. And you'll see their recoveries at $33,376. They do not recover management on this lease. So the actual net earnings, $73,850, that's the actual net rent. Now, I don't have access to all of the leases that the city does, but certainly they should be, at the very least, checked for accuracy, even just given this one error. And I have included again, on the pages following page 18, all of the gas stations on the docket today. 610 Kildare, 1123 Gateway, $19.47 Henderson, 1070 Henderson, which is the one we just talked about here, and 747 Pembina Highway Hall from 2018 is exactly the same chart. And that's why you don't rely on pad leases to determine a rent. So I think that's the information I wanted to cover with respect to that.
Okay, any questions on the rebuttal?
I have a number of them.
Go ahead then. Now's the time to ask them.
Do you want me to do it in questions, or do I have a chance to present on Mr. Borgstrom's rebuttal? Like present our position, or is it just questions?
Well, you can question if you feel the need, or just present your rebuttal.
Okay, I will expedite it by asking just a couple short questions, and then I can just
Okay.
present on the rebuttal. Mr. Borgstrom, with respect to your VSG rebuttal evidence that you talked about, so let me get this straight, just so I understand what you had said. Goodyear owns a portion of Fountain Tire, correct?
And there's a relationship between.
We'll get there, but that was the first step.
There-
I'm just trying to make sure that
There is
I.
a relationship
Yep.
between Goodyear and Fountain Tire, and frankly, I think that that's why your comparable number one was removed.
It was, that's exactly why it was removed. So the next relationship is the relationship between Treadmark and the director, chair of Fountain Tire that you showed on your pages 9 as well as pages 11, being on 2014, the chair of Fountain Tire, and then in 2015, the former chair of Fountain Tire, also being on a director of Treadmark, correct? That was your
That's what the
position?
information shows, that's
Okay.
correct.
But you also said that Fountain Tires were only 50% owned by Treadmark and the other 50% was local owners, is that what you said?
No, I think what the information showed, if we turn back to page 6, the individual stores within the Fountain Tire network are typically owned 50% by Fountain Tire and 50% by the local manager.
So that's exactly what I just said, correct?
No, you were talking about Treadmark.
Okay, so we'll just simplify it, that statement with 50% being owned by the local manager and the other 50% Fountain Tire, correct?
I believe that's correct.
Okay. So, just because this individual happens to be a chair of Fountain Tire Limited as well as a director of Treadmark, that's only 50% of the ownership. The other 50% is the local owner?
information confirms.
Okay, so there is a 50% ownership that is not arm's length, so are you confident that this is strictly a non-arm's length, related parties, or just something that has a little bit more convolutedness to it?
It's not convoluted in my mind. As soon as you have an intermingling of the relationships, and certainly when you look at the individual from the 2014 APB annual report, it's very clear to me that 165 Innsbrook ought not be in there, period. There's no doubt about that one. The other ones, it's our suggestion that they also be removed because of this intermingling. It's not a clean, open market, arm's length transaction.
Okay.
Even at 50%, it is not fully arm's length.
Okay. We'll just agree to disagree, and I will leave that at that. We'll look at your SKP information. So to fully understand everything you were saying, and please forgive me, panel and Mr. Boardroom, just, there was a lot of information here, so I just want to make sure I fully understand your position. We ought not to be using annual pad site rents because of the imputed and things that can go wrong when the building changes on the site, with specifically looking at comparable number 11 at 1070 Henderson.
That was not my evidence.
Then my misunderstanding, because from what I gathered from what you were saying, at 1070 Henderson, when you use the pad site at 580 square feet for a building that was scraped, that is now a larger building, it comes up with a very different number. Is that not what you were saying?
That's part of what I was saying.
Okay. So with respect to that part of what you were saying, you showed that the building did increase in size, and this is on the docket today, so there's no arguing that. But you included the mailer that was submitted on your page 13. So the 2017 mailer, where the city got its information from, with respect to the pads lease in place. The leasable area on page 13 says 580 square feet. The owner said that they have 580 square feet, which is why it's in our chart. Is that not what the owner's telling our department?
Well, frankly, the department has more sources than owner's questionnaires, including permits, and the permit certainly would have been readily available for that property. Certainly the demolition permit would have been taken out, and I can tell you that last cycle, because the property was scraped, and I knew that there was a supplementary assessment in play, that's why what happened with that property happened. So to suggest that the department was not aware.
That was not my suggestion.
Well, okay, so in addition to the error in the square footage, there's the error with respect to the net rent that the city's reporting for that particular property.
Again, I'm gonna have to stick to the information that we have, and, you know, there's a healthy disagreement. We have used the property rental revenue on that chart, and we have used the square footage that the owner reported to us.
There's no doubt that you've used the rental revenue, but you haven't made the adjustment because the lease is not a true net lease.
So just looking at the square footage, because I'm trying to cover one thing at a time, because there's a lot of information you've presented, so I'm just trying to focus on one issue at a time, because it can get very complicated and we will be here for quite a long time. Yes, the city has access to demolition permits and knowing about new construction coming, but it is, in your experience, when we present information with respect to comparables, we typically do bring in information from 2017 for the 2020 assessment, for the reference date of April 1st, 2018. We typically look to 2017 income and expense mailer information. Would you agree with that?
You want me to comment on the city's practices?
In what you have seen in briefs. I will leave that to our presentation. My apologies, Mr. Chairman. I will leave that and my questions on the rebuttal are done.
Okay, any questions on the rebuttal?
If you're saying that you shouldn't have those three properties, 12, 17, and 31, the 1429, the 3020, and the Innsbruck 165, when you look at the assessor's page 9, what would you come up with the average and the median then?
I'm not gonna dispute the figures that she came up with, and I can't remember if she handed out the extra sheet or not. It's going to be about the same, but as I indicated, and as you go through the pictures on here, very, very different. Let me give you one more example, and I haven't really gone into it. If we look at
23 on the
Yeah,
further
just-
than,
let me get you to the right page in our rebuttal. I hadn't intended to go through this, but
I'm just at the, just because you wanted them taken out, so then what
Yeah.
would the number be then? That's what I'm trying to find out.
so let me take you to page 75 in our rebuttal. And this is the assessor's comparable number 23 at 421 St. Mary's Road.
Mhm.
Now, it was formerly occupied by Sturgeon Tire, but it is currently occupied apparently by an Eco Solutions Company, and St. Leon Gardens are on there as well seasonally. This is no longer a VSG lease, as one example.
Okay, okay, all right, we'll just leave it at that. Oh, sorry, and then one more question. You were talking about this comparable, this is to be about high traffic areas, you mentioned? But would you consider 721 Watt then a high traffic area?
No, not at all.
Okay.
And when I looked at the rent, and actually I dealt with this property last cycle, so the Domo lease for their kiosk there is not arm's length, they own the property.
Right,
The service garage is an arm's length lease, but it's on a gross rent, and it was an exercise in futility on my part to try and determine how much to allocate, because if you have 95 square feet of a kiosk and the garage, he's been there a lot of years. I have no doubt that he's built up a good business. That's the rate that's being
Okay.
paid. So I have no disagreement that that's an arm's length lease in place there.
okay, thank you.
Tracy, any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay, you said you had a rebuttal to present, or did you? go
No,
for
I was just gonna make a statement on it, but I'm good.
it? Okay, so on to your main presentation.
I would like to reassure you that the balance of the evening should go much faster. You ran into this last week too, and once we get through the first one, not so bad. So we've already gone over the physical structure, originally built in 56. The department is assigned an effective year built in 1972 to both the 95 square foot store/kiosk and the auto clinic. The city has applied 1425 per square foot to the 1,380 square feet of building area for the VSG. I've come up with a number of rental comparables. I am familiar with all of them. All of them are arm's length open market leases. The one on Moray is 700 Moray. I can also tell you that comparables number 4, five, and 7 are auto body shops. And then I go through some descriptions of them. They are 329 Oak Point Highway is a standalone building. I personally have inspected the property in the past. 1870 King Edward, similarly, it's a single occupant property. 45 Lawson standalone, 120 King Edward is Boyd Auto Body. It's part of a multi-tenanted excuse me. Building. 344. Excuse me, Oak Point. is a single tenant occupied property. Now the tenant retired, subsequently bought the property. That was the lease in place prior to them buying it from Paul's Housing. 84 Squarefield is Boyd Auto Body. 72 Squarefield is ESL. It's an auto-related shop. 1322 Waverly is actually not auto. It has a number of buildings on the site used for a number of different things, including detail and auto repair. So go through the list of the 9. 716 is the average, the median is 680. In this particular case, based on all of that, I've gone with the department's 1425 a square foot. The SKP, again, for the purposes of this hearing, we do not disagree. We do apply 4% as a vacancy rate. This is a single economic unit. And you'll see this as we're going through those gas stations with car washes. 450 shortfall, for reasons gone over and over and over. We continue to suggest a 7% non-recoverable expense rate. The department has applied 6.8% to the store/kiosk and 6.05% to the vehicle service garage. This thing was built in 1956. That's, in our mind, a little on the low side. We have, for the purposes of this hearing, included both our industrial cap rate study and our retail cap rate study, and you know what, I actually agree with the assessor. It's kind of a hybrid between the two. But based on all of that, including the age of the property, we've applied 7.5% in our analysis. So we go through the mathematics on page 10, and we're looking for a reduction to $539,000. The other thing I did want to just bring to your attention on page 16 and 17 on our brief, this property actually appears on the list of contaminated and impacted sites under management stewardship. This property has not undergone any remediation, nor to my knowledge has it undergone testing to see the extent to which that might be necessary. They simply bring it to the board's attention as an additional risk arising from that unknown situation. So, I'm open for questions.
Questions?
I'll just try to make it quick. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All of the comparables you've listed on your page 7, you indicated that they're tire-related, auto-related, correct?
No, that's not what I indicated, so let me take you through the ones.
No, that's okay. I'll retract the question. I'll ask a new question.
I identified 3 of them as auto body shops. Okay.
Would you say that auto body shop could be described as auto-related?
Sure.
Okay. My next question, when you're looking at these rental rates, or the comparables that you've pointed out, we can agree that they're auto-related. But all of them, would you agree that they are assessed as industrial warehouses and not assessed as vehicle service garages?
I don't know the answer to that.
If
I can tell you what they're used
If I said that they were assessed as industrial warehouses and not vehicle service garages, would you believe me?
I have no so I have no reason to disbelieve you. I think of you as an honest and forthright person. So, that being said, I don't care how they're assessed. What
Okay.
I'm telling you is that for their uses as vehicle service related facilities, those are the rents that are being paid.
Okay, so you've used these comparables, you've come up with an average of $7 and a median of 6, yet you've opted to use our 1425. Could you explain that rationale?
Yeah, I took a look at the gross rent on this property, which
Okay.
is quite high in my mind. Knock off some expenses, and I had no reason to dispute your 1425 on this property.
Okay. Those are my questions, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Tracy, any questions?
I have no questions, thank you.
Diane, anything? All right, I don't have anything specific to this property. 6 o'clock, do you wanna take your break now, or?
Whenever's good, if we wanna get through another property, I'm happy to do that.
Takes too long.
Okay,
So, if I might suggest, that one is the first true gas station, it's also got a car wash, you might wanna do it now. It's-
Sure, we can
Yeah,
take a break.
it's not gonna take a huge amount of time, but it will take a little bit of extra time.
okay, let's have it. Okay, we'll move on to 610 Kildare. So you can proceed.
All right. Here we go. So we're looking at file number 19-2624. We have roll number 090012940000. I'm recommending to maintain the 2020 assessed value of $1,145,000.
1/4.
Sorry, $1,445,000. You'll have to forgive me. It's been a long day. It's correct on the page, on page 2.
Sorry, thank you.
On page 3, we have our aerial photos. It's located on the southeast corner of Kildare Avenue East and Wayota Street. I don't know how to pronounce that. Hopefully it's the correct way. This is a Shell station, and it has pumps and a convenience store as well as the car wash. So the subject property photos are on page 4. On page 6, you'll see the income valuation summary for the store kiosk with pumps. We have 986 square feet. We have a rent per square foot of $33.93. We have a 2% vacancy, which is our typical 2% vacancy, which we apply to all of our gas stations. We have a $6 shortfall. We have 2% expenses, and we have an overall capitalization rate of 6.3% for an estimated value of $508,000. On page 7, we have the vehicle car wash. We have 4,820 square feet with a rent of $8.10. We have a 2% vacancy, a shortfall of $4.50. We have 2% expenses with an overall cap rate of 5.55% for a value of $937,000. On page 8, you'll see our comparables that we have for store kiosks with pumps as well as the car washes. We have comparable number 1 is a Shell, similar to the subject property, they're both Shells. The car wash is $10.50. The other car wash we have is again another Shell property at 2071 Corden, comparable number 5 at $10.50. 1376 Regent, we have a Red River Co-op at $10.50 for the car wash. And then we have comparable number 13 and comparable number 14, True Blue Car Wash at 1761 Pembina, and Northgate Car Wash at 1361 McPhillips at $7.72 and $14.51. Again, our store kiosk rent that we have in place for this particular property that our model has derived is $33.93. We have a large range of comparables here. You'll note we have a number of Shell Canadas and a number of different square footages. We have a range, and our $33.93 falls well within this range. If you turn to page 9, we have our income valuation summary. We have a blended cap rate of 5.87%. Similar to the last property, I'm going to apologize for all the flipping back and forth. We have the additional costs, so the additional costs in this property, again, those are the additional costs for the pumps, canopy, and underground tanks is $269,000. Again, it's a little bit confusing because it's on a vehicle car wash income stream. That's just how it's printed, but it is the additional cost for those pumps, canopy shelters, and underground tanks. And again, those are Marshall and Swift values that are reconstructed costs with depreciated with depreciation applied, which we have added to the income stream. So that's the total adjustment that you'll see on the income stream on page 9 for $269,000. On page 10, you'll see general cap rate information. On page 12, you'll see the income and expense mailer that was submitted to our department. Again, on page 19, we have general cap rate information. These are sales of cap rates for a number of properties. Again, we're looking more at retail as well as industrial. I would say leaning more towards retail with it being a gas station, because this is less an industrial property because it doesn't have that vehicle service garage aspect. Please forgive me, I am going through this really quickly in understanding that we have a lot on the docket, so I am happy to answer any more questions that I don't cover in my very quick explanation. On page 20, this is our non-recoverable expense sampling. Again, we have a median of 1.06%. A number of properties that we've looked at the non-recoverable expenses, net of vacancy and shortfall as a percentage of the effective gross income versus the actual. So we have 1.06%, and again, as I stated in my presentation, we are using that 2% that is shown on the expense line of the income streams. That's my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
Just a few, and they are mostly related to the car wash because we haven't done one before. If we look at your page 7,
Okay.
the model has generated a capitalization rate of 5.55% for this particular car wash, right?
That's the cap rate that's been applied by the model, yes, you're correct.
Does the model differentiate in terms of rent or cap between drive-in lawn washes and tunnel car washes?
I would not be able to speak to that.
Would you agree with me that car washes have a shorter life expectancy than other types of structures arising from the humidity and the wear and tear?
I haven't done any research into it. I would think possibly, but again, without any concrete evidence for me to look at, I wouldn't be able to answer that very confidently.
And just to, I don't want to repeat, but just to repeat, the comps on page 8 that you just briefly ran through, those are again pad leases and imputed rents, correct?
These are the rents that we use for our store kiosks and pumps as well as our vehicle car
And you agree that
wash.
they're all pad leases?
Yes, the annual pad site rents are there.
And those are my questions, thank you.
Okay. Any questions, Tracy?
I have no questions, thank you.
Any
No
questions?
questions from me this time.
Okay, go ahead.
So I'm going to start by telling you, and I could have asked the assessor about it, but I'm going to start by telling you that for all of the gas stations, we take a very different approach than the city. The car washes are assessed and valued separately. The pumps, tanks, and canopies are assessed and valued separately. And so what you're left with are the bricks and mortar, a standalone building that is, for any other purpose, a retail structure. So our approach is to, by and large, accept the assessors, and there's some questions about the age life tables that you're using, but for the purposes of these hearings, we by and large accept the assessors' calculations on the pumps, tanks, and canopies. For the most part, we accept their calculations on the rent rate applied for car washes. And you'll see some disagreement with respect to vacancies, with respect to shortfall, and with respect to cap rate as we go through them. So with that in mind, we take a look at a number of rental comparables on page 9. These are all retail properties except 18, 19, and 20. I can tell you that 18 and 19 are the kiosk or store, or the kiosk with store and vehicle car wash. I can also tell you that 66 Mandalay Drive, the civic address is actually 76 Mandalay Drive. That is a standalone structure built in 2009. I personally reviewed the file this cycle. We took it into the board earlier this cycle on appeal. That houses a Tempo gas bar and a car wash. The actual arm's length lease on that thing with a stepped up rent in January of 2014 is $5.64 per square foot for the 5,589 square feet of structure. So with consideration of all of that, we selected for the retail store a rate of $22 a square foot. For the purposes of this report, we've adopted the $8.10 per square foot for the 4,820 square foot drive-in car wash. And so the total gross potential rent is $62,706. Vacancy rate, we're applying 5%. That's a blend between retail at 6 and VSG or vehicle service related at 4. So I've split the difference, 5%. You would not in perpetuity capitalize something at 2%. In this particular case, the department has suggested $6 per square foot for the retail stores, $4.50 a square foot for the car wash. We're using a shortfall rate of $6 per square foot. And if you look again at the income and expense statement at our page 17, if we exclude the insurance and just consider the property taxes, we're approaching $6 a square foot. We're well north of 5, approaching $6 a square foot. So similarly with respect to cap rate, again, we've applied, as we did before, industrial and retail. And we've concluded that the 5.5% cap rate applied to the car wash is low. Similarly with the convenience store, we think that based on the age of the property, rate of 7% more closely reflects it. Page 11, we go through the mathematics. And we're looking for a reduction to $1,041,000. With that, I am open for questions.
Any questions?
I have no questions, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions, Teresa?
I have no questions.
None?
From me.
I did promise to go faster.
Okay, no, we're just catching up. It's hard to drive the hearing and think about value at the same time. Okay, we will go on to 123 Gateway Road.
1123.
1120, I missed the one. Okay, you can proceed. Go ahead, yeah.
Perfect, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Applicant file number 19-4073. The roll number is 0400703190. The address is 1123 Gateway Road. If you turn to page 2, I'm recommending to reduce the 2020 assessed value from $2,065,000 to $2,009,000. After our assessment notices went out to the owners, our department reviewed all of our detached structures, so pumps, canopies, all of those things that we assessed, and updated the cost information on them. And so there was a difference between those numbers. Everything is the exact same, there was just a difference, so our additional building value for those went from $744,000 to $688,000. So everything is remaining the same other than that additional building value that we have. So that's what that recommendation is, just to make that very clear.
Okay, I gather you're not accepting the recommendation.
Well, we're headed the right way, we're just not quite there yet.
If you look on page 3, you'll see aerial photos of the subject property showing its location on the east side of Gateway Road between, excuse me, sorry, between McLeod and Furniture Park. If you look on page 4, you'll see subject property photos. This is a co-op gas station as well as a car wash. This property was built in 2006. If you look on page 6, you'll see our income stream for the store kiosk with pump. We have 1,906 square feet with a rent of $34.30 a square foot. We have 2% vacancy, as stated. Our 2% vacancy is what we apply to all of our gas stations. We have a $6 shortfall. Again, this applies to all of our gas stations. We have the $2 expenses, which we've spoken about already. We have a 6.15% cap rate. We have an additional building value, as stated, of $688,000, and it's actually showing on the correct income stream, so that's a plus, for an estimated value of $1,705,000. On page 7, you'll see the vehicle car wash. We have a leasable area of 1,843 square feet for the vehicle car wash. We have a rent of $9.37 a square foot. We've applied our 2% vacancy, our $4.50 shortfall, 2% expenses, and a 5.4% cap rate, for an estimated value for the car wash of $304,000. On page 8, you'll see the comparables. Again, we've discussed these comparables. They are annual pad sites. We have vehicle car wash for comparables 1, 5, 12, 13, and 14. And then if you look for our SKPs at our net rent, the rate that we've applied to this car wash, or to this vehicle store kiosk, my apologies, at $34.30 a square foot for the 1,900 square feet, falls well within this range. If you look at the different square footages, again, I can point it out. If you look at comparable number 1, it's $40.25 for about 2,000 square feet. Comparable number 6, we have about 1,300 square feet at about $30 a square foot. If you look at comparable number 12, we have about 2,000 square feet at $42. So our comparable, our rent, we feel, is in line with that. If you look at page 9, you'll see the income valuation summary. We have a total cap rate, an overall cap rate for this property at 5.98%, for a total estimated market value of $2,009,000. Again, cap rate information on page 10. The income and expense mailer is on page 12 and 13. Our addenda information is on pages 15 through the end of the brief. And again, if you look to page 17, we have our retail cap rates that range from 3.1% to 7.4%. And this is a relatively new building, as I stated, built in 2006, so it does have a lower cap rate, which I think makes sense. On page 18, we have a median of 1% for our non-recoverable expenses, defending our 2% that has been described. Again, I'm going through this very, very quickly in the interest of saving time. So if there is any questions, I am more than happy to clarify anything that anyone has. That's my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, questions?
Thank you.
Tracy?
No questions?
My assumption is that questions previously asked
Yes.
and answered. So.
Diane? Okay, these are the mechanical car washers, are they not? The touchless
Tunnel.
tunnel.
I haven't been in the property. I'm going to assume, because co-ops typically are that, but I have not actually inspected the property. If Mr. Borgstrom says that's what they are, I believe him.
Well, I've been in them, certainly. They do have different types. The one on Roblin is different. It's a pull-through. It moves a lot more cars through it.
When you say pull through, the one that like pulls your vehicle for you? Yeah.
So
They
it's
have
different.
that in Bridgewater as well.
That's the modern standard that they have, so.
Okay, thank you, so you can proceed.
Thank you. Really short and sweet, our rental comps on page 8. Now, you'll recall that on Kildare, used a lower rate. That one was built in 1992. Here I've looked for newer properties constructed in the 2000s, and so based on the approach that we've applied on the Kildare property, exactly the same here, but because it's built in 2006, we've selected $28 per square foot as an appropriate rent for the retail store, or structure, if you will. No dispute with the $9.37 per square foot. Go through the mathematics on page 10. I am going to adjust, as the assessor has, the pumps, tanks, and canopies to 688,000. I do just want to point out the shortfall rate, if you consider, and we've attached the income expense questionnaire at the rear, if you consider just the property taxes on the property, that's $8.93 per square foot of building area. We've applied 6 in the retail store, 450 on the car wash. So based on all of that, and a 6.5 cap rate, which for newer retail is what we've applied, we're looking for a revised reduction to $1,633,000. That's based on the adjustment made to the pumps, tanks, and canopies.
Pat,
That's it, short and sweet.
questions?
I have no questions, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Questions, Tracy?
No questions, thank you.
Diane?
No questions.
Where this is 28 and 937 untested. Okay, thank you. Okay, 1947 Henderson. You can proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're looking at file number 19-4075, roll number 0400120150. The address is 1947 Henderson Highway. This is a Red River Co-op property, and looking at, I'm recommending to maintain the 2020 assessed value of $1,888,000. This is Red River Co-op located on the northeast corner of Strood Avenue and Henderson Highway. They have an assessment as stated of $1,888,000. We have, in the previous assessment cycles, an outstanding municipal board for 2018 at $1,580,000, a 2016 value of $975,000 that was not appealed to the municipal board, and a 2014 assessed value of $857,000 that was not appealed as well. If you look on page 4, you'll see subject property photos showing the co-op as described. On page 6, you'll see the vehicle car wash income stream. We have a leasable area of 1,288 square feet for a rent, with a rent of $9.35 a square foot. Again, we have 2% vacancy, a $4.50 shortfall, 2% expenses, a cap rate of 5.4%, for a value of our car wash at $212,000. If you turn to page 7, you'll see we have a leasable area for the store kiosk with pumps at 450 square feet, with a rent of $186.75 a square foot. And we have a vacancy of 2%, a shortfall of $6, expenses of 2%, and a cap rate of 6.15%. We have an additional building value for the pumps, canopy, and tanks at $365,000, for an estimated value of $1,676,000. If you look at page 8, again, these are our comparables. Our comparables for car washes are, we have 3 of them at $10.50, 1 of them at $7.72, and 1 of them at $14.51. And our current subject property, we have $9.35. If you look at the store kiosk, this is a property that has a smaller square footage. So if you look at the smaller square footages, comparable number 2 is 500 square feet at $188.57. Comparable number 3 is 540 at $90.74. Comparable number 4 is 112 square feet at $160.71. If you look at comparable number 8, we have 540 square feet at $92.59. Comparable number 9 at 364 square feet at $151. Comparable number 10 at 432 square feet at $150.27. Comparable number 11 at 580 square feet at $137.06. And we have $186.75 on this property. If you look on page 12, it's the income and expense mailer submitted for the subject property. Again, on page 17, you'll see cap rate information from our actual sales. These have been described. I would look at the retail ones that range from 3.1 to 7.4%. On page 18, we have our non-recoverable expense sampling with a median of 1%, defending our 2% that we have presented in our income stream. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Questions?
Again, all of the rents that you were going through are not actual leases of the building areas, they're actually pad leases, right?
That's the information we have for
And they're-
these properties.
And they're imputed rents, they're not actual lease rates on those buildings, right?
These are how these properties rent. They typically rent as pad leases, and that's how we've presented them.
So I didn't quite hear the confirmation there. Those are imputed rents?
These are rental rates that are applied to the pad site leases, and these are the rental information that we have.
All pad leases. So I'm looking at your page 12 and the property tax expense at $24,300 with a total leasable area of 1,738 square feet. Yes? Your page 17 shows 24,300.
Yep.
And 1,738 square feet.
Correct?
That works out almost $14 a square foot for shortfall, just for property taxes. And we don't know how the model arrived at the rates they did.
Again, I can't speak to how the model works. I did not go in it. Again, when you're looking at the property taxes are for the property as a whole.
And the shortfall rate is applied, it's a single building rate.
Mhm.
Store, color, pump tanks and canopies. If it's vacant, the owner is responsible for that. That's what shortfall is, and so the shortfall would be almost $14 a square foot.
If you're looking at it in a very black and white sense, which I don't agree with, that is how the math works. So you and I will just have to agree to disagree, but the math of 24,300 divided by the square footage equals 14.
Thank you.
Questions, Diane?
No.
Tracy?
I have a question.
Okay, you can proceed.
Exactly the same approach for gas stations as we've seen before. This one was built in 1999. The one on Gateway was built in 2006. So we've gone through some rental comparables, slightly newer. You'll see there there's a range of rents with an average of $21.51, median 23. We've selected $26 per square foot for the retail store on this property. Going through the mathematics on page 10. Because this is built in 1999, we amended the capitalization rate to 6.75%. It's a single economic unit. If you're familiar with the building at all, it is a single structure with a car wash attached to the convenience store at the front. Adopting the adjustment for pump tanks and canopies, and based on all of that, we're looking for a reduction to $669,000. Which works out to $385 per square foot of building area.
Okay, any questions?
Just one. Mr. Borgstrom, you have been taking us through the exercise of calculating property taxes and coming up with what the shortfall would be. Can you reconcile the $14 shortfall on the subject property and the $6 you've applied?
We've left a little, we kept some of our powder dry for the anticipated future repeal. It will definitely be an issue at the school board.
Those are my questions. Thank you, Mr.
There
Chairman.
you go.
82,000 or 85,000 income. Just have a hard time figuring it out.
Okay.
On the SKP, he's showing 82,000 or 84,000 as potential rent, and he's got 11,700. Why is there such a discrepancy?
Oh, there's a big difference in the rates there.
I know.
Yeah.
Big
They've
difference in the-
applied $186.75
Square foot, right.
per square
Okay,
foot
got it.
as a rent attributable to the store.
Okay,
And you're using actuals, correct?
I'm using rental comparables.
Comparables,
This
okay.
is an owner-occupied
Yeah.
property,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
anything, Tracy?
I have a quick question based on that line of questioning.
Okay,
Would you permit me?
yeah, go ahead.
Just the question regarding the actuals that Mr. Borgstrom has used. Just to clarify, I think you've explained this, and are any of these gas stations, just the three that you've mentioned, index number 13, 14, and 15? The rest of them are just retail? Is that correct?
And so let me just perhaps skip over too quickly. Our approach is very different than the city.
Oh, I heard that
The-
part.
The car wash is valued separately, the pumps, tanks, and canopies are valued separately, and so what we're left with is a retail store, bricks and mortars of a retail store. And it doesn't matter in that retail store if they're selling moccasins or hats, it's a retail outlet, or Hallmark cards, it's a retail store.
So the answer is
It do-
yes.
It doesn't matter what the business is.
So the answer of only those three indexes were gas stations? Was that the answer to the question?
Well, two of them are the assessors, and one of them is ours, and I can tell you that the one at $5.64 is a combination of a car wash and a Tempo, all within one building, and a Tempo gas bar. Pumps, tanks, and canopies outside and separate and apart. That's a standalone building on that site.
Again, so I have asked it, I think, a third time. Those three comparables are your gas stations and car wash comparables, correct? And the
Well,
remainder
they
of them
are
are not.
they are either just a store and a kiosk, or they are a combination of a store and a kiosk and a car wash.
Thank you for permitting me that opportunity, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. I'm gonna ask on your cap, and maybe I'll ask both parties this, on the cap rate for the car wash, does it make a difference if it's a wand wash, a touchless car wash, or a, one with the twirly thing, to use a technical term?
It doesn't matter to me, because the equipment is not accessible. What you have is a structure with either no heat or very minimal heat, and some equipment. And I can talk about the Marshall valuation, because I am Marshall certified. I've also been through the IAAO commercial workshop. Gas stations and car washes have a much shorter lifespan than other ordinary structures. Life expectancy for car washes between 20 and, for gas stations between 20 and 30 years, and I believe car washes are about the same range. Depends on the climate, depends on the use, but in our particular climate, the use of the structure as a car wash is very hard on the physical structure. So,
Okay, and do you have an answer to that question as to,
I can't speak to how the model works, sorry, Mr. Chairman.
okay, thank you. All right, we will proceed. Working our way towards downtown, we'll go to 1070 Henderson Avenue. So you can proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're looking at file number 19-4716, roll number 02-031-378-500. The address is 1070 Henderson Highway. If you turn to page 2, you'll see that I'm recommending to maintain the 2020 assessed value of $1,854,000. This is a building built in 2018, and we have a leasable area of 1,685 square feet. If you turn to page 3, you'll see the aerial photo of the subject property showing its location on the southwest corner of McLeod Avenue and Henderson Highway. On page 4, you'll see subject property photos. On page 6, you'll see the income stream. We have a leasable area of 1,685 square feet. We have a rental rate of $36.36. We have a 2% vacancy, a $6 shortfall, 2% expenses, and a cap rate of 6.15%. We have an additional building value of $901,000 for a total estimated value of $1,854,000. On page 7, you'll see our comparables. Again, I've gone through these pretty thoroughly. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. Again, the building, with respect to the comparables, is significantly newer. The closest comparable in age on this list is 690 Sterling Line, built in 2014. Subject property was built in 2018. On page 9, you'll see our general cap rate information. On page 11, you'll see the income and expense mailer that was submitted for the 2017 income year. You'll note the total leasable area says 580 square feet. There's not 580 square feet. As of, I think the new addition we put on, if I'm reading my notes correctly, was effective at the end of January of 2018. On page 17, you'll see the new construction permit that we have for the subject property, showing they're constructing a 1-story, 169 square meter gas service store with 6 pumps, 6-lane gas bar, with a 2,464 square foot canopy. If you turn to page 21, we have our cap rate information. Again, retail cap rates range from 3.1 to 7.4%. This is a building built in 2018, so it is a relatively new building. On page 22, we have our non-recoverable expense sampling, and again, our median is 1.06%, and we have 2% that we've applied on the income stream. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do you have any?
Just one, actually. So you refer to comparable number 1 on Sterling Line. Yes.
Yeah? I'm wondering where the question is.
Well, were you aware that that was reduced on appeal this cycle?
I'm not concerned with whether or not things are being reduced at the Board of Revision. I'm concerned with the information that's presented in the mailers that we use as our comparables. Otherwise, we're comparing assessments.
So your reference previously to previous assessment cycles and the values thereon shouldn't be considered?
I was talking about a subject property and the history of it. When I'm talking about Sterling Lion, I think my exact wording was, our subject property was built in 2018, and the newest comparable on this list was 690 Sterling Line, and it was built in 2014. Those are facts. I didn't say anything else other than it was built in 2014. Based on this list, it's the newest one with respect to the subject.
But again, pad lease, yes?
We've gone over that.
That's a yes.
Asked and answered, Mr. Borgstrom.
Thank you, those are my questions.
Okay, any questions, Diane?
Not this time.
Tracy?
Just a clarification, the mailer says 580 square feet. I know we've talked about this before, and it's 1685, but did they upgrade to use in 2018? to the 1685?
With with respect to how the assessment is done, or I just wanted clarification on the
Just
question.
clarifying that,
So-
so your page 16 says still 580 square feet
So,
as of 2017, and so in 18, after, yeah, in 18 it went to 1685 square feet.
yes, so what happened is we sent out a supplementary adjustment. I believe we had an effective date of January 17th, 2018, so we would have sent out a supplementary adjustment. So the way our 2020 assessment works is it's based on income information as of January 1st, 2018, for the physical condition of January 1st, April 1st, 2018, physical condition January 1st, 2020. So what's presented on the mailer by the owner was for the income year, because we would have sent this out in June of 2018, and we're specifically asking them for income information from 2017. So the owner's saying in 2017, we had a 580 square foot building, but for the assessment for 2020 purposes, because they built the newer building effective January 17th, 2018, we would have sent out a supplementary notice for the 2018 value for 2018 and 19 with the 1,600 square feet at that date. And then when 2020 came out, it would have also been at that 1,685, if that answers your question.
It does actually, thank you very much.
Okay, and I have no questions, so you can
I
proceed.
do have one question. Do you know when it was scraped?
I can look and see. According to the note on the file, the demolition was completed on September 20th, 2017.
And so when the questionnaire was returned, it was pretty clear the 580 square feet reported was in error, correct?
When the questionnaire was returned for a bulk of 2017, the owner very honestly reported to us that their building that they had in operation in 2017 was 580 square feet. I'm not going to say it was an error, that's your words, Mr. Boardroom, but in our position, there was a 580 square foot building there for most of 2017, which was then scraped for a new building.
Building or no, the rent that was being paid on that pad site remained the same, correct?
That is correct, and the information we've presented is with respect to 2017. Otherwise, we would have a rent with a pad site with no building for 4 months. So we're looking at what was reported to us on the mailer.
Those are my questions, thank you.
Okay, you can give us your presentation.
Okay, exactly the same approach as with previous properties. We now have 1,685 square feet building. Did you break?
No?
Built in 2018, we took a look at a number of newer rental comparables. We've selected, based on the age of the property, $30 per square foot. Again, different ages will have different rates applied to them. The 5% vacancy, a newer property went with 6.25% cap rate. We look at the mathematics on page 5, and we're looking for a reduction based on all of that to $1,607,000.
Questions?
$30 a square foot and 6.25 cap.
Questions?
I have no questions, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Casey, any questions?
No questions,
Diane? All right, we're making good time here. So we are now moved to Adarada 7 on Pembina Highway, 747 Pembina. You can proceed.
Perfect. We're looking at file number 19-4082, roll number 12-097-511-900. The address is 747 Pembina Highway. If you look to page 2, I'm recommending to maintain the 2020 assessed value of $1,639,000. This is a co-op gas station located on the southwest corner of Pembina Highway and Taylor Avenue. If you look at page 3, you'll see the aerial photo as described. If you look at page 4, you'll see subject property photos showing the co-op gas station as described. On page 6, you'll see our income stream. We have a leasable area of 1,760 square feet. We have a rental rate of $38.44. We have a 2% vacancy, $6 shortfall, 2% expenses, and a 6.15% cap rate. We have an additional building value for the pumps, tanks, and canopy at $586,000 for a total estimated value of $1,639,000. On page 7, you'll see our comparables. I've gone through this a number of times, so if you have any questions, feel free to ask, and our rental rate falls within the range. We have our cap rate information on page 9. We have the income and expense mailer found on page 11. We have, again, more cap rate information on page 16, looking at the retail cap rate information for the most applicable. Also, our non-recoverable expense sampling found on page 17. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Any questions, Brandon?
I do not, thank you.
Any, Diane, any questions?
No,
Tracy?
No questions, thank you.
Okay. You can proceed then.
So I just want to start on page 2, and that's a picture of this. This is the co-op gas station right at the corner of Taylor and the highway on the west side, southwest corner of the intersection. You can see it on page 2 on the very right-hand side of the picture. That's the 1,760 square foot convenience store. If you look in the background behind the pumps, tanks, and canopies, that's the adjacent property, which is a combination of retail space and Salisbury House. Save and accept the separately valued pumps, tanks, and canopies, what you got here is a retail store in an otherwise retail location, looking at the property next door. We took a look at a number of rental comparables, predominantly in fairly close proximity to the subject property. Based on all of those, and given its year of construction of 2008, we again, consistent with the other properties, selected $28 a square foot. There is no car wash at this location. They pump enough gas that taking up space for a car wash would reduce the volume of gas that they can actually pump in this location. So we go through the mathematics on page 10, and exactly the same or consistent with the previous properties. $28 a square foot, 5% vacancy, 6 shortfall, 6.5 cap based on its age. Adopting the $586,000 for pumps, tanks, and canopies, and we're looking for a reduction to $1,248,000.
Questions?
I have no questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Tracy, questions?
no questions.
Diane?
No questions.
Okay. Bear with me for a minute while I get something to wet my whistle. Okay, we move to 19 Stapleton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're looking at file number 19-4023. The roll number is 14093807100. This is 19 Stapleton Street. We have a 2020 assessed value of $576,000, a 2018 value of $399,000, which was not appealed to the municipal board. If you look on page 2, you'll see that we have a property that was built in 1969, which is its actual year built as well as its effective year built. We have a leasable area of 3,960 square feet. If you look on page 3, you'll see aerial photos of the subject property showing its location on the east side of Stapleton Street, just north of Thomas Avenue. On page 4, you'll see subject property photos. On page 6, you'll see the income stream for the vehicle service garage. We have 3,960 square feet at a rent of $9.54. We have a 4% vacancy, a $4.50 shortfall, 2% expenses, and a 6.05% cap rate, for a value of $576,000. The applicant and ourselves are in agreement on everything except for rent, expenses, and cap rate. On page 7, my apologies again, but we will have to go through and remove comparable number 1, comparable number 13, comparable number 21, comparable number 22, and comparable number 24. Again, it doesn't change the average or the median at $13.78, and the median at $12.63. For the subject property, we have applied a rate of $9.54. Obviously, it's a lower end of the range, and as stated previously, a number of these properties are on main streets that are more high-profile locations. The subject property is on Stapleton, off Narren. It doesn't have a high-profile location, and I think we've reflected that in the rent that's been applied, as well as it is an older property. If you look at page 11, you'll see the income and expense mailer that was submitted for the subject property. Again, page 18, you'll see our cap rate information. And on page 19, you'll see our non-recoverable expense sampling. That's my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
Just a couple. You've indicated that there's a question on the property. Would you agree with me that this is an owner-occupied property?
I haven't done a company search. The mailer on the first page on page 11 doesn't say whether or not it's owner occupied.
Okay.
There's a checkbox to check off.
Mhm.
It indicates that it is a net rent. And then on page 13, where it says owner occupied, they've written a no. I haven't done a company search, but based on what's said on the mailer, it says that it is not owner occupied, but I don't have any information as to whether it is or not because I haven't completed a company search.
You said on your page 13, okay, so if we look under the notes though, we'll see there where it says that forum and the owner have associated ownership. Is that an indication that this is not an arm's length lease?
Yeah, I think that's what it says in the notes, although it's very confusing since when it says owner occupied, they say no. And then write that it's associated.
You'll appreciate that people that run vehicle service garages aren't sophisticated real estate people. They're doing their best to fill these things out.
Absolutely, and I've relied on the model and I haven't actually pointed any information other than this is the mailer that was submitted, so.
So you indicated the previous assessment was, I think, $399,000?
That was the Board of Revision decision, and I was just saying that it wasn't appealed further to the municipal board.
But if we look at the current assessment, that represents 44% increase,
I didn't do the math.
576 over 399, 44%.
If you say so, Mr. Borgstrom. Again, I didn't do the math.
Those are my questions, thank you.
Okay, Tracy, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Ian? Okay.
So I'm going to take you through a couple of pictures first on page 2. This property has, normally in a vehicle service garage or service-related type of property, you'll see multiple doors lined up in bays. This property has a door on the south side and a door on the east side. And you can see that a little more clearly on page 2 and page 4. You see there the overhead door at the top, and you'll see the rear door at the bottom. The other, I'll call it an issue with this property, is that the land building ratio is approximately 4.17 to 1. That's a little on the skinny side for anything vehicle service related. They need a place to park not only for their employees, but their customers and the vehicles that they're working on, so it's a little inadequate. So we take a look at excuse me, rental comparables on page 8. You'll see there in the second paragraph, and it's the same thing I put in there last cycle. This property is owner occupied. They are a related corporation. This is not an open market arm's length lease. So return to the market, I can tell you that rental comparables 1, 2, 3, 6, and 8 are all vehicle service related. And you'll see there are a range of rents. This property was built in 1969, so it's an older vintage. Based on all of that, I've selected $8 per square foot as an appropriate rent to be applied to this structure. As the assessor indicated, the disagreement is with respect to non-recovered expenses and the capitalization rate. My view of this type of property is that it is most closely related to industrial type properties. Based on the capitalization rate study we provided separately, we dispute the 655 that the model has applied, and we're applying 7.25%. Mathematics on page 10, we're seeking a reduction based on all of that to $375,000.
Questions?
Did I go too fast?
No, you just said you dispute the model that it said 6.55.
As a cap rate.
She's using cap of 6.05.
Is that a typo? It's possible.
Yeah, that's what I was looking at too,
Yep.
when you said 6.5.
Yep, quite right, yeah, that should be 6.05.
Okay, thank you.
And which is more egregious in my world, but 7.25 is what we've.
Okay, thank you.
Tracy, any questions?
I have no questions.
Oh, it's your question.
Okay, we can go in whatever order, as long as I get a chance to ask questions.
Sorry, I just caught the.
No,
thing and
that's
I was like,
okay.
hey, I was confused. Sorry,
That's okay.
I was out of turn.
Again,
I've
I
been
can't
confused
think
a
and
number of
chair at the
times.
same time.
Mr. Borgstrom, just to go over, because we did touch briefly on vehicle service garages on the first property at 721, but now that we've sort of moved on from gas stations and we're back into vehicle service garages, I want to just quickly go over a few things again. When looking at your comparables, you did indicate comparables number 1, 2, 3, 6, and 8 were vehicle related. But again, going back to my previous question, these are all industrial properties and assessed as such, correct?
I don't know the basis of their assessment, but I can tell you they are leased on the basis of their use as either body shops or vehicle service related garages.
Looking at the total leasable area with the smallest leasable area of 7,000 square feet and going significantly upwards to 17,000 square feet, and all of them being around that 15,000 square foot mark, and the subject property being about just shy of 4,000 square feet, would you not agree that these are significantly bigger properties typical of industrial type properties?
I can't speak to the typical industrial. I can tell you that they are occupied and leased on the basis of vehicle service related.
Okay. Those are my questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, would there not be economies of scale then, so the smaller square footage to rent for more?
I agree with the principle generally, yes, but as you look through them, bear with me for a moment. So the subject property is built in 1969. When you take a look through them, you'll see a range in ages, and the highest rents are 1988, and so that makes sense. So it's not solely economies of scale. There will also be some relationship to the age. There will also be some relationship to their location in terms of the desirability, exposure for customer traffic and so forth. And so based on all of that, we have applied a rate higher than both the average and the median.
Okay. All right, thank you for that. $23,750 Saskatchewan. They gotta give us shorter names this time of night. Okay.
We're looking at file number 19-3484, roll number 07439051500. We have a 2020 assessed value of $1,284,000. We had a 2018 value of $864,000, which was not appealed to the municipal board. We have a value in 2016 of $817,000, which was not appealed to the municipal board, and a value in 2014 of $796,000, which was not appealed at all. On page 2, you'll see subject property information. We have an effective year built of 1980 to 2000. We have a leasable area of 6,911 square feet and a land area of 55,831 square feet. If you look on page 3, you'll see aerial photos of the subject property showing its location on Saskatchewan Avenue between Sturgeon Road and Moray Street. On page 4, you'll see subject property photos. This is Car Star Collision. On page 6, you'll see the income summary for the lease, the income stream for the vehicle service garage. We have a leasable area of 6,911 square feet. We have a rent of $13.13 a square foot, 4% vacancy, $4.50 shortfall, 2% expenses, and a cap rate of 6.55%, for a value of $1,284,000. The applicant and the city are in agreement on everything with the exception of rent, expenses, and cap rate. On page 7, we'll have to go through this on all of them. So please cross off comparable number 1, comparable number 13, comparable number 21, comparable number 22, comparable number 24. And again, even with removing those, our average and our median is $13.78, and our median is $12.63. And our model has applied a rental rate of $13.13 a square foot. On page 9, you'll see general cap rate information. On page 11, you'll see the income and expense mailer that was submitted to the city. And on pages 17, you'll see the cap rate information. And on page 18, you'll see our non-recoverable expense sampling. That's my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions, Brian?
I do. You show this property as being built between 1959 and 2000?
Yes, we have an actual year built on file between 1959 and 2000.
Do you know the sizes of the structures that were built in the 2 years?
We have a partial permit for the foundation, partial permit foundation for the repair service from 2000, and construct for the permit from 2000, it says construct a 1-story, 550 square foot office addition, a 797 square foot second floor addition over an existing office area, and a new 1-story, 670 square foot shop addition. That's what the permit stated.
So we have a total of 6,911 square feet of the gross floor area?
That's what our information says, correct?
That's what your information showed on page 2, yes?
Yes, that's what I said.
And so if we add up your figures, we are in the range of 2,000 square feet, so less than a third, so more than 2/3 built in 1959?
If that's what the math says. I trust your math.
Were you aware that this property does not have sewer or water?
I actually saw that when I was looking at our land information, and that was something that I had questioned as to what was there, but I didn't have time to actually investigate that
Is that
further.
something that the model would recognize?
I wouldn't be, again,
Don't know.
wouldn't be able to speak to the
Fair enough.
model.
Is that something for which you, so 1959 aside and location on Saskatchewan Avenue aside, is the lack of sewer and water in this location something that the rental rate should be adjusted for?
Again, I didn't look into that further. I think our rental rate is appropriate. It's well in line with our mean and median. A number of the properties that are listed on our page 7 are significantly older than the subject property. We do have an addition that was built here. We have a range of 1980 to 2000, although a number of our comparables that we have are in and around that range or older, and a number of them are higher, and we have a mean and median. So I think it's appropriate. I can't speak to whether the no sewer or water. We have a rental rate, this is what it rents for. That's the information that we have.
Those are my questions, thank you.
All right, you can begin your presentation. Oh, any questions from the panel?
No, thank you.
Yeah, I'm thinking. All right, you can begin your presentation.
Thank you. First place I'm gonna start is on page 14, or that is the income summary printout from the city's website. You'll see there that they have assigned an overall age to the property of 1980, not 1980 to 2000, 1980 overall. That reflects the 2000 construction, the details of which we show on page 13. You'll see there that the city has a one-story structure, not quite 4,900 square feet in size of the total gross floor area, built in 1959. So we took a look at the rental comparables again on page 7. Again, we have 6911 square feet, 4,900 square feet of which were built in 1959. Again, owner occupied. It is a body shop. So based on all of that, we are suggesting a rate of $8.50 per square foot. In this particular case, with a varying or an effective year built of 1980, but reflecting its location, without sewer and water, the value on page 9 at $688,000 is what we think is the correct figure. And so I'm open for questions.
Questions, Lindsay?
I have no questions, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Questions from the panel?
Okay, just because I'm curious, what do they do with,
Body repairs.
no, sewer and
sorry.
water?
As with other locations, they will have, well, not gonna be allowed a well in that location, so it'll be
Cistern,
cistern and tank, yeah.
Tank field. Well, what do they do with all their, like, the auto body, do they use water for that?
Most assuredly, yeah, yeah. There are similar, not body shops, but similar trucking uses actually out Brookside on the east side, north of Inkster, that are unserviced as well. So there are locations within the city of Winnipeg that are IC&I uses that are not serviced. Kind of is.
Schools in the city of Winnipeg
Never
are
dull,
serviced.
life's never dull, eh?
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, 1590 St. James.
Thank you. We're looking at file number 19-4022, roll number 07001541500. We have a 2020 assessed value of $1,285,000. We have a 2018 Board of Revision decision at $1,056,000 that was not appealed to municipal board. On page 2, you'll see our subject property information. We have an actual year, an effective year built of 1968 to 1978. We have a leasable area of 8,178 square feet with a land area of 37,223 square feet. If you look on page 3, you'll see aerial photos showing the subject property's location on the southwest corner of Saskatchewan Avenue and St. James Street. Both of those buildings that you see in the bottom picture on page 3, the red building and the gray and blue building, those are both on the subject property roll number. On page 4, you'll see subject property photos. On page 6, you'll see the income summary. We have a leasable area for 2 spaces, one at 6,150 square feet, one at 2,028 square feet, and we have an overall square footage of 8,178 square feet for a blended rate of $11.13 a square foot. We have a 4% vacancy, a $4.50 shortfall, 2% expenses, and a 6.55% cap rate for an income value of $1,285,000. The applicant in the city of Winnipeg are in agreement on everything except for rent, expenses, and cap rate. On page 7, my apologies, we get to go through this exercise another time. Please cross off comparables number 1, number 13, number 21, number 22, and number 24. Again, it leaves our average of $13.78 unchanged and our median of $12.63 unchanged. Again, we have a blended rate of $11.13 for the subject property. On page 9, you'll see general cap rate information. On page 11, you'll see the income and expense mailer that was submitted to the city of Winnipeg. On page 18, you'll see cap rate information, and on page 19, you'll see our non-recoverable expense study. That's my presentation, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Any questions, Brian?
I do have actually just a couple, so if you look at your page 4, the building in the picture second from the top. Bear with me for a moment. That's the structure that was built in 1978.
I don't actually know which one's which, but I can look and tell you. You know what, I don't have the information at my fingertips, so if you
Fair
say it was, then I will believe you,
There was-
Mr.
there was a
Boardroom.
question. So there are two separate buildings, right?
I did say that, yes.
And one built in 1968 and one built in 1978.
That is what our information says.
So if we look on page 6, can you tell me how a decade apart we come up with rents very close to each other?
Because we'll have an overall year built for this particular building.
But it's
Because,
sorry to interrupt, I'm just trying to expedite. It's actually broken out into 2 separate premise IDs here. It's not an overall year built. Is it?
we apply an overall year built to our income streams, the way our model works, but also our individual rental rates with respect to the square footage. It is based on, I believe our model for the rental rates work based on square footage of the building as well as the building's age. So it does look to the age of these individual buildings with respect to our rental model. So to my knowledge, the way our rental model works, just to be very, very clear, those $11 that are applied, those look to the ages of the individual buildings that they are linked to with respect to the square footage. For the income stream with respect to cap rate information, we have an overall year built. I do know that is how our model works. So it would be looking to those individual ages for those buildings, for those rental rates.
Do you know if the model, I know the answer for industrial, do you know if the model accounts for wall height?
Accounts for wall height?
Yes.
I can't speak to what the model accounts for with respect to office properties. I wouldn't,
This is not an office property.
sorry, the office portfolio of properties.
Is this under the office portfolio?
It is.
Okay.
There are a number of properties under the office portfolio that are not typically offices.
Interesting. Those are my questions, thank you.
Okay, Tracy, any questions?
No questions.
Brian, no
Oh,
questions?
thank you. Sorry.
Okay, you can proceed.
So I'm gonna start on page 14, and there you're gonna see 2 different buildings. There are, in fact, as the assessor has described, 2 separate buildings. The larger one where the main auto body is, or main Publishing is located as the larger building built in 1978 with a 14-foot wall height. And the smaller building, 2260 square feet, is the older masonry wall structure with a wall height of 18 foot, built in 1968. We do show those a little clearer for you on page 4. And again, just for your reference, this property is owned by the same chap who owns 19 Stapleton, so in the businesses that he has in here do not lease on an arm's length basis, they're interrelated. So we took a look again at the same rental comparables you've been looking at tonight. On page 9, in this location, we've selected $850 a square foot. It's a typo above, that should be $850 a square foot. And again, we've gone with the 4% vacancy, 450 shortfalls, 7% non-recovered expenses, and a 7% cap rate. This has an overall age assigned to it that we show on page 15, and the overall age is 1976. We've applied 7% based on all of that, and we're looking for a reduction to $866,000.
Okay, any questions?
I do actually have a question. Thank you.
Well, you're lucky you got a chance.
I'm happy that you asked me. Mr. Borgstrom, looking at the previous property that we had on Saskatchewan that had an addition built in 2000, and then the question of sewer and water, you did elect to use the same rental rate as well as the same cap rate on both properties. Would you be able to explain that?
Different uses.
Okay. Uses.
And with respect to the cap rate, this one actually, and if we've been in the St. James area, we'll know that there's been an ongoing evolution of the area towards more retail uses, even in industrial properties, certainly north of the Polo Park area. So all of that is why I've come to these conclusions.
When you say different uses, are they not both sort of collision, auto body, car related uses?
They are, but I was talking about the general area, and my view of the area is that it has been undergoing this evolution, and so it has some future potential to be not converted, but to be changed. It has more desirability in this location. It's a crap building. The red one's a crap building. The other one, I would suggest, could be modified, changed, used in a different fashion. That's why I've gone with the rates I've gone with.
Those are my questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any questions?
Pardon my language.
I was like, what did you say?
I said the C word.
I realized that when I thought about it.
Any questions from the panel?
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
I did have sewer.
Sorry.
You're confusing the panel when you're using those technical.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, back to Pembina Highway, 715 Pembina Highway.
Thank you. We're looking at file number 19-3070. We have a 2020 assessed value of $1,542,000. The value in 2018 was $1,065,000 that was not appealed to the municipal board. In 2016, the value was $757,000 that was not appealed to the municipal board. And a value in 2014 that was $660,000 that was not appealed to the municipal board. On page 2, you'll see subject property information, and I'm recommending to maintain the 2020 assessed value of $1,542,000. On page 3, you'll see aerial photos of the subject property showing its location on the northwest corner of Jackson Avenue and Pembina Highway. It's just slightly north of Pembina and Taylor. On page 4, you'll see subject property photos. And on page 6, you will see something that you have not seen tonight. We have land sale comparables here. Now, the reason we have land sale comparables is I'm going to go into an explanation of this. My apologies if you've heard this a number of times, but this is going to be different than what we've seen on other properties. The way our model works, we come up with land values for properties as well as income values if they're income producing properties, such as the subject. And what happens when we send out assessment notices on properties? If our land value, based on our land value model, comes out higher than what the income value is, that is what gets sent out on the assessment notices. So it defaults to the land value if that is what is higher, because it's saying that based on the land sales that the model comes up with, that the model looks at, and the land rate that's applied, and the square footage of the property, that is the highest value, and it's not, the income that our model applies is not the potential of the property. So then when we look at the land value, that's the assessment that has gone out. And so then my job is to look at what is our income on this, what is the land on this. So I had looked at the land sales that were in the area, and I felt that our assessment was appropriate at the land value. So that's why you're going to see these land sales that are on page 6. So we have 7 comparables here. We have comparables number 1 and 2 is a resale of the same property. It's at 421 Glasgow. It's located on the river on the east side of Osborne Street between Togo and Glasgow. It has since been merged with another property, but it has a significant amount of undevelopable land on that property. And so it sold twice. It sold in 2012 and then sold again in 2013. And the 2012 sale was at $38.42. And the 2013 sale was at $51.23. So the reason I showed both of those sales here was to show that a time adjustment is warranted for older sales, because typically we don't show those time adjustments when we come here before the board, but we do say that sales that are older should be time adjusted. So that just evidence that when a resale happens, there is a time adjustment that can be placed. 2300 Pembina Highway. It's actually the old Montcalm Hotel on the southwest corner of Markham Road and Pembina Highway. They've now built condos there, as all of you I'm sure are aware. So at the time that property sold for $48.75 a square foot. It was a 2012 sale. So if you're looking at a time adjustment of that property, it is a larger property, very narrow property, similar to the subject. Although it is on Pembina, significantly south of the subject property. Comparable number 4 is at 2025 Pembina Highway. That's located on the southeast corner of Bison Drive and Pembina Highway. It's where that Dairy Queen used to be that they put down, and they have the tall apartment building that they've built there. So that was a smaller building, and they've now built a high-rise apartment building that's there, and so we have $67.04 a square foot for that 2016 sale. At 601 Jackson and 584 Ebby, those are actually very close to the subject property. They're just across Pembina Highway. It wasn't a typical multi-roll sale, but there was 3 properties that sold all on the same day with different transaction numbers. So I only have 2 of the sales here because this chart was actually put together for me, and one subsequent to researching these sales after the exchange transpired. There were 3 properties actually involved in that, and for the total of $800,000, they sold for $29.49 a square foot. So they're actually, like I said, just across Pembina Highway, and they're adjacent to the rail line that's on the other side of Pembina Highway. So they aren't on Pembina, and they don't have that street access, and they are limited because it's right adjacent to the rail line, and I do know there is development limitations with respect to being adjacent to the rail line and the rapid transit route. At comparable number 7 at 380 Osborne Street. That's located on the northeast corner of Dawn Avenue and Osborne Street. It now has a multi-family building built on it, and so it was a 2018 sale, very close to the reference date, at $80 a square foot. So the subject property, with respect to the comparables, as shown on page 6, is 32,993 square feet at $46.74. We've shown a range of comparables here and ages of properties. that are typically in chronological order, but you will see that comparable number 2, it goes 2012, 2013, but again, that was shown as a resale to indicate that there would be a time adjustment that would need to be placed. And then the remainder of the brief is just our typical addenda. And so that's our presentation with respect. This is, again, like I said, it defaulted to our land value in the model. And then my job is to go through and look at our land sales and look at the information that we have with respect to income information. And I think based on the sales that our land sale and considering its location on Pembina Highway, our $46 square foot is very appropriate. I'm happy to answer any and many questions.
Okay, questions, Ben?
Thank you. So you haven't anywhere within your brief shown an income workup on the property, correct?
I have not, but I do know what the income workup would be if you're wanting to ask me what that would be.
Well, no, but you're aware that the property is leased?
I am.
Now, the sales that you show on your page 6, you say they're all land sales?
They were sales that were considered land sales, so when we look at land sales, we look at sales that are vacant land that sell, and then we also look at properties that have a building on them that was demoed immediately after, and we consider those land sales as well, because clearly the property owner did not buy that building, they were buying the land to develop, so we also consider those vacant land sales.
So when you say demolished immediately, how are you defining immediately?
When very close to the sale date, or if there was, when we research our sales and we contact the vendors and purchasers, we send out sales mailers as well, so it says what you're intending to do with the property, so our staff review those, we call the vendor and purchaser. Typically when they say we bought it to demolish it, or there'll be a demolition permit around the time of the sale, all of those things are things that we look at with respect to this stuff.
You've researched all of these sales? You've checked into them?
I looked into them as much as I've explained here today.
And do you know, or can you state that all of the sales were open market?
Pardon me?
Are all of these sales open market?
I wouldn't know that.
You said you looked at the sales verification forms.
I said we send out sales verification
look at
forms. I didn't look as to whether or not these had them. I looked into them on whether or not our staff, when they review sales, they put notes in our system. So if they're the person that reviewed the sale, they put a note indicating the information they found with respect to the sale. So we don't go ahead and then re-review a sale that's been reviewed as to whether or not it's been included in analysis. So I did not go through the sales mailers. I looked on our sales information in our system. I read the notes on the property from the person that reviewed the sales.
Okay. Now, you've also indicated that your comparables number 5 and 6 included a third property.
Based on the information that when I was reviewing, preparing to come for this hearing today, when I was looking at the notes on the property, I discovered that there was a third sale that was adjacent to one of them.
And what is the address of that property?
It was just a roll number because it was a vacant land.
So what is the roll number?
I have to. So we had 8,000, 3,000, 8,000, 3,000, 12, 0, 1, 2, 5, 7, 5, 0, 0, 0.
0, 1, 2, 5.
12, 0, 1, 2, 5, 7, 5, 0, 0, 0.
Okay, thank you. And those are my questions, thank you.
Any questions, Tracy?
Oh, thank you.
Diane?
Moving over this time.
Okay, just, this address on Pembina Highway, pretty good visibility on there.
The subject property?
Yeah,
Yes, I believe it has great visibility. It's right on the corner of Pembina and Jackson. If you're driving down Pembina, which I do every day, I drive right past this place. When I saw the address and the photos, I knew exactly where it was. Right now Stafford has actually got construction on it, so I have to take the side streets to get to Pembina faster. And it actually comes out right by this property, so I do drive by quite a bit.
okay, so, that would be likely why it's more comparable to the properties further down Pembina and that?
Those are the ones that are on Pembina Highway. They are right on Pembina. They are further south on Pembina. This one is closer to the downtown. And like I said, we have a range. We have a number of land sales that we've presented here, and I believe it's appropriate.
Would there be any restrictions to usage here? Like, could you knock the building down and put up a multi-story apartment on this land?
It has C2 community zoning, and if you look at the ones on Pembina Highway that built the condos, if you look at 2300 Pembina, that was the Montcalm Hotel and built the condos, and 2025 Pembina, they all have C2 zoning, which is the same, and those properties did have those types of buildings built on them.
Although the neighbors across the back lane might have something to say about that. Okay, all right, thank you. You can proceed.
I do have another question arising. Do you know what the lot dimensions are on this site?
The lot dimensions, I have not looked up the lot dimensions, that's not typically something we do for appeal
Is
purposes.
it fair to say that the property has angular frontage on Pembina, but it really is a long and narrow lot, correct?
It is a long and narrow lot, and a lot of the properties, almost, I would say exclusively, most of the properties on Pembina do have angular frontages. And again, when looking at the comparables that I showed, for example, I think I stated this in my presentation, comparable number 3 at 2300 Pembina Highway, it had frontage along Pembina, but it was a long angular lot as well. It was just situated a different way.
And it would be, that's another way. Fair to say that all of the sales you have included here were used within the model in generating land values?
Again, I can't speak to what's used in the model. All of them, when I reviewed the notes, were all included in analysis as something that was written when it was reviewed.
Do you know what the setback requirements are for this site based on the zoning in place?
I have not reviewed that, no.
Would that be a consideration in determining a land value?
I was looking at similar zoning, and every single sale that I have reviewed has C2 zoning similar to the subject.
Do you know if this property has anything else that might impact its value?
You had indicated to me prior to this.
I'm asking you if you know.
Well, if I said no, that would technically be a lie, and I'm under oath, because prior to this hearing, you indicated to me that it was on the impacted sites list. So yes, I am aware.
So prior to coming here tonight, and when you prepared your report, you had no such awareness, correct?
I didn't look into that because typically any vehicle service related property that is used as vehicle service related, gas stations, any auto would be on that impacted site list. It's just sort of something that happens just because of the use of the property.
So do you know what the remediation requirements are for a commercial use or for a residential use?
I have not looked into that, no.
I do have, those are my questions, I do have some reply.
Mr. Chair, can I ask another question?
Sure.
So when you're saying impacted site, no, because that brings something different into it, does that lower the price per square foot then?
You're gonna get a different answer from different people, and Mr. Boardroom and I will have different answers for you with respect to that. It's something to consider if there hasn't been testing done, but like I said, if you are looking at any vehicle-related use, anything that works on cars, car dealerships, vehicle service garage, gas stations, those will all get put on the list, because there is a chance anything that has something built under the ground, tanks, anything like that, will get put on the list. So whether or not this property has been reviewed, that it's been tested, whether it needs to be remediated, I don't know any of that. If they had done the work and it required testing and it showed that it was contaminated and required remediation, then there would be something to consider. But without any concrete evidence of if there is something, I don't have those answers.
So then going back to your comparables, you have no idea if any of those have impacted sites on them?
None of them were used as any vehicle-related use other than the Osborne one.
Okay,
But I didn't look to see if
Okay.
they were on the list.
just asking.
Okay, I'm going to apologize for the length of this rebuttal, but we have information on each of the properties. So I'm going to start with the assessor's land comparable numbers 1 and 2. We have the supporting documentation within the appendix. The 2012 sale was actually a multi-sale with the building immediately in front of it. If you take a look at page 5, numbered again in the bottom right-hand corner, you can see the overhead shot. The dot is the assessor's land sale. The building immediately to the left of that is the office building, which, by the way, is occupied by Winnipeg Transit. And you'll see there on pages 6, 7, uh, 6 and 7, you'll see the silver sale record for the 2012 sale. We turn further, and I've included the tax bills because on page 9 we show the mailing address of the person who owns the lot, if you will. If we turn to page 10, that is actually the sale on the same date of the office building immediately to the west of the subject lands. And if we turn to page 12, you can compare the mailing addresses. That is exactly the same mailing address for both lots. So we sold one and the same, and I don't know from the amount of time I had to investigate it, whether or not the 2013 sale was the same. What I do know is that it is now occupied by Winnipeg Transit, so that's that one. So the assessor sales comparable number 3 was, as she indicated, the former Montcalm Hotel, and we'll show you pictures of that on page 14. You'll see there in 2009 the overhead shot. You'll see at the bottom of page 14, that's a shot from June of 2012. Now, the city, bear with me. The city is suggesting that this was vacant land in October of 2012. Montcalm Motor Hotel was not for sale. What was acquired was a going concern hotel that was shut down, scraped, because they could put a densely populated multi-res development on there, much of which is rented out now to students attending the University of Manitoba. The thing I do want to take you to next is the IAAO standards on page 23. This is the standard on verification and adjustment of sales. And you recall that the assessors brief all have some reference to the IAAO. On page 25, and this is dealing with the Glasgow properties. Sales in which the buyer already owns the adjacent property should be carefully examined. Well, that's exactly the case with the duplicate sale on Glasgow and Osborne. They own both properties. Should be carefully examined to determine, my apologies, whether or not the buyer possibly paid more or less than the property is worth on the open market. In some cases, because of the neighbor relationship, the buyer may even receive a deal on the property. But there are a number of circumstances there which would lead you to conclude to exercise great caution and not just accept the reported price willy-nilly. Similarly, on page 26, which is the last page, this is on the standard of verification and adjustment of sales under 5.10, property characteristic changes. Sales data files should reflect the physical characteristics of the property when it's sold. We're going to talk about another property in a moment. The assessors already acknowledged the Dairy Queen. This was the Montcalm Motor Hotel. It's not a piece of vacant land, it was a going concern operation. And so it goes on to say, for racial studies, if significant physical changes have occurred to the property between the date of sale and the appraisal day, a sale should not be included. It's a different use. It is not a vacant land sale. I want to talk to you briefly about the assessor's land comparable number 4. Now, she's indicated quite correctly that it was occupied by a Dairy Queen, and I'm going to take you to our page 16. We can talk about this property because it was formerly a client. I have worked on this property myself for previous appeals. This is a picture from August of 2016, and you'll recall that the assessor's evidence was that the sale date was April of 16. So April of 16 sale date, this is a picture from August of 2016. The Dairy Queen is still there. They bought the lease, they bought the property, and the tenant with the lease in place. Page 17 is from July of 2017. Again, this is more than a year later, still the Dairy Queen. This is not vacant land. But the interesting detail that wasn't included here, if we turn back to page 2, and the assessor referred to the site where there's I don't want to call them pocket suites, but they're student-oriented, the high-rise apartment buildings going up there. It wasn't just the Dairy Queen site. They had to buy the property next door to it. And we show the details of that on our page 2. They actually acquired those lands that I've outlined in this diagram here, and I've given you the roll number 03-618-51000. This was an additional 25,016 square feet to accommodate the development that's now on that site. Subject site doesn't have that potential, doesn't have the market for the students in close proximity, and with its odd configuration, it doesn't have the width necessary to develop it in that fashion. Finally, almost finally, pages 5 and 6, they were not vacant land at the time of sale, again. And so let me take you to page 18 of our rebuttal evidence. You can see an overhead shot there, and you'll see a little red dot, and you'll see a building there. It's a better picture on the bottom at page 18. You can see there that's a building, but it's pretty clear from the pictures that this was not a vacant site at the time of sale. And that was the property in Jackson. We turn to the sister property on Heavy, and you can see there a better picture at the top. That is the structures that were in place. You can see the site outlined in blue. And when you look at the bottom picture, they haven't scraped all the buildings. There's still a building in place on this site. I don't know how the city can classify this as a vacant land sale when it clearly is not. And finally, when we take a look at the assessor's comparable number 7 at 380 Osborne Street, and the assessor indicated that that was a vehicle garage, service garage. It's not. This was Fort Rouge glass. You can see there the picture at the top. Those are the structures that were on the site. If you look closely, and I want you to remember that the assessor has reported this sale as January of 2018. This property was not for sale. They were approached. This is not an open market sale. And from 2017, you'll see a picture attached to the building, and if you blow it up or if you squint really closely, that sign says, "We're moving." This is from July of 2017. So they knew they had already been purchased. It hadn't been finalized or transacted, but they already knew that they were moving. Take a look at page 22, and you'll recall from the assessor's evidence, she reported a sale price of $1.4 million. But when we look at the Sabre sales record, it actually shows two different things. It shows a sale price and a sworn value with two different figures. And more than that, you go down below that, or you go to the previous picture, and it describes for you what in fact was on the property. It was not a vacant land sale. And so with that, I am open for questions.
Any questions on the rebuttal?
Not really, because Mr. Borgstrom didn't really present anything that was new to us. We're just in a difference of opinion here, so I have no questions.
Okay, any questions, Diana?
I don't have a question about the rebuttal, but I have a question about something that's in the city's presentation.
Okay, well, let's just deal
Okay.
with the rebuttal, and then we'll come back to the city's presentation.
No questions.
Okay, so,
You have an email in here about a property 693 McPhillips Avenue.
I have an email, I have no emails in my brief.
That's in mine.
What page?
It doesn't have a page number, but there's the first flap that says Board of Revisions. And then the next page is an email coming from a Doug Betker to a Brittany Santucci
I think
about
that's,
693 McPhillips Street.
I think that was, I don't know how that got in there,
Okay,
but
I'm just, because mine's different from yours.
yeah.
I'm just,
But extra. Lucky.
I'm just going
you know
this
what?
out,
I bet you that got
and
printed.
I'm just gonna pass this to the
I think,
secretary
I
and leave
think
it at
that
that.
may have got, if it didn't have a page number on the
No, it
bottom,
didn't.
No,
I think what happens is people, when we're printing at our printer,
it happens.
rummage through people's briefs,
Yeah.
and then
Or
they're
prints-
like, oh, this
yeah.
wasn't mine, and they slide it
that's-
back in. And then when I go through it, I take the top copy of the
Yeah.
6, I look at all the pages, and if everything looks good, I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and wrap an elastic
Yeah.
around it. So yeah, there should not be any
Okay,
emails in
because
there.
I'm kind of looking at it going.
I'm like, I don't have an email in
I
my
know.
brief.
And in fairness to the assessor, it's not in our brief.
Right,
in
it's,
the
I
copy,
just,
so-
it was here, and I'm kind of trying to figure out, what does that have to do with it?
And what did it say?
It said it's totally not about this property, so either property or any of your comparables, and that's why I was like, oh dear.
I'm very sorry.
That's okay.
I'm like, I never include emails from anyone in my brief, so I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm so
Well,
sorry.
that's how I.
Okay, so you
She's
can
got it now.
proceed with your presentation.
Any other questions? Okay. So the first thing I'm going to take you to, and I'm going to disagree with the assessor's characterization of all vehicle service garages being on the contamination list. I can tell you I've looked at many of them, and that is simply not factual. But what I will do is take you to page 22, and this property actually used to be a Shell station years ago. That's why it's on the impacted sites list. And I suspect that that's why, and particularly with the old style tanks, typically seepage. For residential standards, there is typically, I haven't investigated the file, full disclosure, but from past experience with service stations where they are impacted, it requires a significant amount of remediation. I can give you the example of what is now the Manitoba Clinic at the corner of Notre Dame and Sherbrooke. It used to be a Shell station, was not on the open market, was acquired by Manitoba Cancer Care for the location of the new Manitoba Clinic. They scraped the site, they remediated the site, but the remediation they only had to excavate the site because they were putting a basement in. So that took care of the remediation. It's not an inexpensive venture. And I suspect that that will absolutely be the case on this property. So when we take a look at the overhead shot of this property on page 3, you can see there the width, and you recall I asked the assessor about the width. The lots along these streets are not particularly deep. Certainly not more than perhaps 120 feet deep. That's going to give you some severe restrictions in terms of setbacks for any future development. The other thing that the assessor hasn't contemplated is the demolition costs involved with scraping this site to realize land value. So we show again on page 4, again an overhead shot. At the top, on the bottom, we show actually down the back lane a shot towards Pembina Highway or towards the east end of the site. You can see there are the overhead doors. It's actually currently occupied by Dillon Auto. As a tenant, the property is leased, has been leased for many years. The owner has never been approached to have the land, to have the site acquired for further development. It's simply not in the cards, nor has there been any market analysis of any such development from the assessor. So in this particular case, we took a look at the actual lease in place. It is a semi-gross lease, I can tell you, because the landlord does not recover the insurance expense. That works out to about 60 cents a square foot. And so the actual net rent that we show on page 7, $10.56 per square foot. They show the tenant as Can West Auto Body, which is really weird to me because it's occupied by Dillon Auto. We also took a look at the same rental comparables that we've been looking at all evening. Based on all of that, we applied the actual lease in place. 4% vacancy, 450 shortfall. We have incorporated in this case a 7.5% cap rate. The property was originally constructed in 1970, there was a 1998 addition. But there is the issue with respect to the impacted sites listing. And so in our view, that represents a greater risk associated with this income stream and the site. So we go through the mathematics on page 10. We're looking for a reduction down to $663,000 based on all of that. I think that's the information. Oh, hang on. Almost. So I did want to point out that if you look at page 16 of our evidence, for 2018, Mr. Bull brought this into the, as did Marcel, into the board revision, and you look at the assessor's page, our page 17, the department valued this on an income approach for 2018. And the board reduced it, excluding any excess land value. 2014, I don't have the information for 16, but 2014 was done exactly the same way. You can see on page 20, again, an income approach was applied by the department. And frankly, there is no reason to vary from that in these circumstances. So I am open for questions.
Questions?
I have no questions.
Okay, any questions, Jason?
No questions.
Diane?
No.
Okay, so this is on the impacted sites list, not the contaminated sites list?
That's correct. And to be clear, the impacted sites require investigation typically by way of test holes being drilled and left. I'm sure you're familiar with it, which may or may not lead to the conclusion that there is remediation required before any alternate development. My belief, based on it being a previous Shell retail outlet, with the tanks as they were back in the day, that is very likely going to be the case here. I can give you a number of examples around the city of vacant land, former gas station sites that have been scraped and sitting vacant for an extended period of time, still require remediation. One right up top, the old Esso station on Henderson, around Layton. It's a very large site there. It's now being developed with an office. They actually had to come in and remove all the soil, treat it, replace the soil. That's the process.
Green, between Green and Limited,
Yes, yes.
and then now it does have a site
Yeah,
thing on
yeah. I
it.
think it was built on spec, but yeah. But they had to remediate
Yeah.
the soil, which was the point, yeah.
Okay, those are my questions. So we come to our last property on the agenda.
Can we say yay?
Our work is not done yet. 370 Beatty Street. So you can proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're looking at file number 19-3212, roll number 12-097-751-100. The address is 370 Daly Street. If you look on page 2, I'm recommending to maintain the 2020 assessed value of $861,000. We have an actual and effective year built on this property of 1947 to 1981. We have a land area of 54,612 square feet and a leasable area of 5,335 square feet. If you turn to page 3, you'll see an aerial photo of the subject property showing its location on the northwest corner of Dudley Avenue and Daly Street North. It's just east of Pembina. It's beside where that old MPI office used to be. On page 4, you'll see subject property photos. On page 6, you'll see the income summary for the subject property. We have a leasable area of 5,335 square feet with a blended rate of $12.29 a square foot. We have a 4% vacancy, $4.50 shortfall, 2% expenses, a cap rate of 7.05% for a value of $861,000. On page 7, you'll see our comparables, and again, we'll have to go through this one last time. Please cross off comparable number 1, comparable number 13, comparable number 21, comparable number 22, and comparable number 24. Again, that leaves the mean and median unchanged at $13.78 and $12.63. Again, we have a blended rate of $12.29 a square foot. On page 9, you'll see cap rate information. On page 11, you'll see the income and expense mailer for the subject property. On page 26, you'll see cap rate information, and on page 27, you'll see our non-recoverable expense sampling. It's my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
I have just actually a couple about the structure. Property you show as being built in 1947 and 1981.
That's what our records indicate, correct?
Do you know the size of the buildings in those 2 different years?
Let me look and see if I know. You'll have to bear with me. I don't have that information in our,
Fair enough. Now, your information on page 2 also indicates a 39-foot wall height. And if we look at your pictures on page 4, that doesn't look to me like 39 feet.
clearly there's some sort of mistake there.
Would that affect the model rate that was applied?
I do not believe so. We don't usually, I know that you mentioned before that industrial properties, the model does recognize wall height because, oh, I thought you said that it did. Yeah, I don't know how our model works, but I wouldn't guess that it takes into consideration wall height because that's not something typically that vehicle service garage people are looking for. They're all similar sizes of buildings that are being looked at.
I understand that you folks have this classified as a vehicle service garage. Do you know what it's used for?
It was previously a Sturgeon Tire, and it's owned by J-Max,
Right.
and they own a number of auto body. They have a collision repair place just
It's a client.
slightly down the street.
It's a client.
Yeah.
So, in looking at your pictures on page 4, it looks to me like the model has generated a rate of almost $13 a square foot for this building.
We have a blended rate of $12.29.
Right.
Are you saying that we have $12.99 on a 4,000 square foot part of the building?
4,350 square feet of that building. It appears you folks have by $12.99.
That's what our model has, and as I stated, we are looking at overall rates of the building, and we have a blended rate of $12.29.
Is it possible the model's a little wonky on this one?
I don't think so. I think the overall rate of $12.29 falls very well in line with our market comparables that we have on page 7.
On page 2, you also show an effective year built of 1947 to 1981. Do you know what the city really applies to this property?
What do you mean what the city really applies? I'm not,
Well, is-
I'm confused by your
When you're
statement.
considering an effective year built, it's not a range, it's a number. Do you know
Well-
what the number is?
As stated previously, Typically, our model, when looking at the rental rates, and you'll have to forgive me, I did explain this before. Looking at the rental rates that are applied with the different spaces, whatever they're linked to, it looks at the ages of those properties. With respect to an overall year built, that's how we derive our capitalization rate, so there would be one rate on our income stream. But when we are looking at rental rates, it does point to the year that that building was built. So you do see different ages on, or different rental rates on properties.
And you would expect if the portion of this building that was built in 1947, with clearly not 39-foot wall height, you would expect that the portion of that building built in 47 would attract a lower rate than the portion that was built newer?
I would assume so. Again, I can't really speak to the numbers that come out in the model, but I would assume that older properties do rent for less than newer properties. That is shown time and time again with respect to the market comparables that we do present here at this board.
Those are my questions, thank you.
Okay, any questions from the panel?
I have no questions.
Okay, you can proceed.
So, I'm going to start on our page 2. That is a street shot of the structure. I can tell you that 4,120 square feet of that structure was built in 1947. That's according to the city's records. There was a 1,215 square foot wood frame addition built in 1981. So we've got a total of 5,355 square feet, of which 80% was built in 1947. And it's pretty clearly not 39-foot wall height. We show that information on our page 3. Subject site is irregular, as you see on page 3. It's irregular in configuration. We do show some, it's been a long day. We do show some overhead shots on page 4. Nowhere on that site do you see anything with a wall height of 39 feet. So I have no idea where that, and perhaps that's influenced the model, I don't know. But we took a look again on page 7. The subject property is primarily owner occupied, again, a related corporation, JMax. They do lease out some of the yard to Electric Signs, I believe it is. But we did take a look at rental comparables. These are older. This structure isn't used as a vehicle service garage, it is used as storage. And that's why I've selected these rental comparables. Akin to the use, this is not a garage where you would drive in and have a hoist in there. The wall height and when you look at the height of the doors, the wall height inside is simply not sufficient to elevate a car. There are no pits in this building, and so we took a look and we've selected on an overall basis $4 per square foot for this, given its use as a storage warehouse. Now, we've gone with, on page 9, the net leasable area at that rate, 4% vacancy, 7% non-recoverable. NOI works out to, including the 7%, $56,192 for a 1947 building with some newer structure, 7.75%, and we're looking for a reduction to $725,000. And I believe that's the information we wanted to cover.
Is that your presentation?
Yes, thank you.
Any questions, Lindsay?
I do, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Looking at your comparables on page 7, you've indicated that you've chosen to use storage rents because this is used for storage by the property owner, is that correct?
It's not a vehicle service garage.
That wasn't my question.
It's used for storage by the owner, if you want to consider, all of these are warehouse type properties, older. warehouse type properties, as is the subject.
And so they're all assessed as industrial warehouses?
I don't know how
Using
they're-
industrial parameters?
I don't know how they're assessed. What I've looked at is what they're used for and what the lease, what they are being leased for under that use.
You indicate that it's used for storage, based on the photos in your brief as well as our own brief. It is owned by J-Max, and knowing familiarity, I understand it's your client, but I also know my familiarity with those properties and the properties that they own on Pembina Highway. They are a collision repair company,
Well,
correct?
Their properties are off Pembina Highway, and they've got some major issues with land and parking, but yes, they're.
But they are called J-Max Collision,
Yeah,
correct?
and well, and there's a related company, his brother owns J Automotive, so they're related things. But the main, I've got, not today, I've got it coming up, another docket coming up. The main building was one that had burnt down a couple of years ago, it was rebuilt, and now they have this very large, it's right behind the
I know.
enterprise office property. And so, if you're not aware, so there's an enterprise office building, 2-story. Their building is behind that, but the land to building ratio in that case is atrocious, and they've actually, they were allowed to build it by the city, and the city has now come back and, getting off the topic, they've got major parking, they've got major issues with parking availability there, and the city's making noise about it.
When you say their building is behind it,
Their-
they
their
own,
major
they
one.
own that, the whole property all the way up to Pembina, and they own Enterprise, correct? They're all on the same.
They own the building that Enterprise is in,
Yeah, so it's on the property that they own.
separate structure.
Yes, but it's on the property
They
they
don't
own.
own Enterprise, they lease it to Enterprise. I'm just trying to be clear.
They own the property that the building's on, whether they lease it, whether they occupy the building, they own the property that the building is on, correct? You know what, I'll just retract the question because it's getting a little bit convoluted. Mr. Borgstrom, you indicate that this is used for storage space, and I mean, I haven't been in this property for a long time, but I did handle this appeal, for 2013, before it was, your client. So I did inspect it in 2012, and the last time I inspected it, it was a vehicle service related building. It was built as such and occupied as such. And based on the photos from the outside, nothing has actually changed with the building other than what the owner has chosen to use it for. It would have been helpful, do you have any photos to provide of the inside indicating that there are no longer places to bring cars in or that it's used as vehicle service related?
I do not, and when I say storage, I am conveying to you what the owner has told me directly.
So have you inspected the property
I
yourself?
have not.
Okay. Those are my questions, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, any questions from the panel?
No, thank you.
I got one question. You got this other income of 38,100?
Actually, that's, no, and I think that's a typo. They do lease out some of the yard. And if you look at page 15, it shows the total income of 12,700. It's not 38,000. So if you also look at page 17, they show a different amount there. It doesn't work out to 12,000 a year. And it's not going to be on a net basis because they're not recovering property taxes on it, so it's very, the information to me is inconsistent.
Okay, so what is that 38,100?
That's a good question.
Because that is a
Yeah.
substantial portion of your NOI.
It is, and when you, but if you look at page 15, that is the 12 months ending October 31st of 17. This is the income and expense questionnaire sent back to the city. They're saying 12,700, so was it a partial year or full? I don't know. The 38,000 I can tell you is a typo.
Okay. All right. Anything arising from that?
Of my
Any
Question?
questions? No? Okay, that concludes today's hearing then, so thank you very much for your presentations, and it wasn't all that bad. I hope to be out of here by midnight.